Divine ring. That cry was like the cry of a god, shaking the world and penetrating people to their cores. The four chi seas below the Feng Fu star, Alioth star, Life Fate star, and Enlightenment Palace star fully activated, and boundless energy surged within him. A red, orange, yellow, and green ring appeared behind him. It caused the void to rumble, and even the barrier of the martial stage began to shake. The four-colored, 3,000-meter divine ring revolved. It seemed to contain the greatest principles of heaven and earth within it, as if it possessed the entire world's laws. It was sacred and divine. This was Long Chen's first time fully activating the divine ring since arriving in the Central Plains. What kind of technique is this? Even the barrier is being affected. The Elder Hall Master was shocked. Long Chen's divine ring was loosening the barrier. This barrier was not an ordinary one. Even foundation forging experts wouldn't necessarily be able to shake it, as it was extremely tough. Those below the Jade Core realm were normally unable to damage it. But Long Chen's divine ring seemed to possess some strange energy that was disturbing the barrier. The Elder Hall Master sank into thought for a moment, and then decided to secretly increase the power of the barrier to make sure it was secure. The divine ring was absolutely shocking and drew everyone's attention. But no one noticed a man standing in the air, calmly looking at the divine ring behind Long Chen. That person was the Shen Master. Even as he stood there, no one was capable of noticing him, not even the Hall Masters. Seeing this divine ring, the Shen Master's expression finally turned a bit grave, and he was lost in thought. The divine ring's manifestation had completely suppressed the manifestation of Kei Xinyan's cry of the heavenly Daos and his merging with heaven and earth. That shocked Kei Xinyan. Having activated the manifestation of merging with heaven and earth, he had sucked all the heavenly Dao energy dry. Theoretically, he could suppress any celestial in this space. However, he was unable to sense Long Chen's existence and use his heavenly Dao energy to lock onto him. It was like Long Chen was a fish, and Kei Xinyan's heavenly Dao energy was water. No matter how much water he used, he wouldn't be able to drown Long Chen. Kei Xinyan didn't realize that Long Chen's divine ring didn't draw heavenly Dao energy. As a result, his heavenly Dao manifestation had no effect on Long Chen. As for Long Chen himself, he had no dependence on heavenly Dao energy, and so Kei Xinyan's powerful cry of the heavenly Daos, which was fatal against other celestial, was useless against him. So what if you have a trump card? In front of absolute power, you're still just garbage, shouted Kei Xinyan. The spiderweb-like heavenly Dao runes suddenly shot toward Long Chen, and Kei Xinyan also slashed his flame blade at Long Chen's head. Boom! Long Chen slashed Blood Drinker out, clashing with Kei Xinyan's flame blade. A powerful explosion rocked the heavens. Long Chen was surprised. Even with his divine ring, he was unable to shatter Kei Xinyan's flame blade. Fool, do you think I condensed my flame blade with some ordinary magical art? This is a flame cultivator's core flame, the wellspring of my power. You thought you'd break it with one blow? Laughable. Kei Xinyan sneered. His flame blade suddenly transformed into a spear and stabbed toward Long Chen. This sudden change came without any warning. Long Chen hastily tilted Blood Drinker to block the flame spear. But just at this moment, a crafty light appeared in Kei Xinyan's eyes. A flame sword appeared in Kei Xinyan's other hand. He stabbed it at Long Chen's ribcage. This flame sword was extremely strange. It was not formed of flame runes and was just like a normal weapon that was incomparably sharp. Even before it arrived, Long Chen felt goosebumps. If he was struck, his body would be instantly pierced. Blood Drinker suddenly released a suction force that drew in Kei Xinyan's spear. Long Chen borrowed that power to dodge his sword. Did you think that would work? Kei Xinyan's spear vanished, and now Long Chen had no way to borrow his power to dodge. The flame sword in Kei Xinyan's other hand suddenly explosively grew and stabbed toward Long Chen. Despite Long Chen doing his best to dodge, the flame sword still slashed across his waist. It left behind a long cut, and Long Chen's blood poured out. What startled people was that despite that flame sword looking like it was formed of condensed flames, there was no heat. It didn't cauterize his wound. What is going on? Asked Zhao Ziyan. When heat is compressed through special magical arts, it transforms into sharpness, and one's core energy can transform freely as they please, said Huaxiu. Quite a few people jumped upon seeing Long Chen injured. The women supporting Long Chen all turned ashen. That had been too close, and he had almost been pierced through the heart. But as soon as Long Chen was injured and began bleeding, his body curved and he sent a kick straight at Kei Xinyan's nose. Kei Xinyan let out a pained groan and was sent flying. Everyone jumped in shock once more. Just as they had thought the trend of the battle had been decided, Long Chen struck back. Long Chen sensed some kind of energy that was constantly trying to break his body apart within his injury. However, as soon as he activated the primal chaos bead, its life energy instantly healed him. Long Chen was already charging at Kei Xinyan again. Kei Xinyan had only just used his heavenly Tao energy to heal, but tears still covered his face. Of course, that wasn't from being moved, but because Long Chen's kick had irritated his tear ducts. His injury had healed, but he had yet to wipe away those tears. With his turbid sight, all he managed to see was a red blur coming toward him. He was shocked. The surrounding heavenly Tao energy had been seized by him. Others were unable to use it to heal, but Long Chen healed even faster than he did. Long Chen fiercely slashed down with his saber. An incomparably heavy aura locked down Kei Xinyan. Split the heavens. With Long Chen's fierce attack coming right at him, Kei Xinyan couldn't bother with how Long Chen had healed. All he could do was block. Boom. Astral winds erupted. Kei Xinyan was sent flying by Long Chen's attack, shocking everyone. This is the heaven-splitting battle sect's unique battle skill. How did he learn it? Cried some of the elders in shock. Split the heavens form and domineering aura were extremely easy to recognize. All the elders saw through the origin of this attack. Li Changfeng and Lu Minghan had learned about Long Chen's split the heavens back then. But upon returning, they had only reported it to the higher-ups. The others hadn't learned of it. The elders were unable to comprehend how Long Chen had learned the heaven-splitting battle sect's core technique. The heaven-splitting battle sect was filled with only unreasonable fellows who definitely would not allow other sects' disciples to learn split the heavens. Meteor fire rain. Being sent flying twice, Kei Xinyan was infuriated. Forming hand seals in the air, countless flame spheres condensed high in the sky and shot down at Long Chen. Each one of them was like a powerful meteorite, and they completely hid the sun. When the meteorites landed on the ground, they exploded and raging flames covered the land. The place Long Chen was standing turned into a sea of flames. Boom. Suddenly, Long Chen charged out of the flames, lightning flickering around him. He arrived right in front of Kei Xinyan like a phantom, and he slashed with his saber. Long Chen had only just arrived beside Kei Xinyan when his expression suddenly changed. He shot backward as countless flame spears shot out of the ground. If it weren't for his sudden retreat, he would definitely have been struck. As it was, he only narrowly avoided this trap Kei Xinyan had set. Long Chen fell back 7 times, just enough to dodge this trap. But when he took his 8th step, his figure suddenly vanished. When he appeared once more, he was once again by Kei Xinyan's side and attacked him. Everyone was shocked. They suddenly realized why Long Chen's 7 steps had appeared odd. He had been accumulating energy through them. It was an incredibly outrageous tactic. However, Long Chen's saber missed. Kei Xinyan had dodged his attack and appeared in the air. The disciples were all startled. The two of them were incredibly fast with lightning reaction speeds. Their offensive and defensive moves all came without the slightest warning. This speed was something they could never hope to keep up with. Just trying to keep track of their bodies was very difficult. Long Chen's blood-colored saber was incredibly fierce, while Kei Xinyan's core flame continuously transformed into different weapons. Furthermore, he could unleash them from any part of his body, giving them great killing power. Their intense fight dazzled the disciples. As for the lightning dragon and flame dragon's fight against the flame leopard, victory or defeat had yet to be decided. They were still locked in an intense battle. He's not a celestial, but he can contend against a rank 5 celestial. This Long Chen is truly powerful. Seeing that Long Chen wasn't at the slightest disadvantage against Kei Xinyan caused people's hearts to pound. As for the women who had been worried for him, they were cheering loudly. To them, being able to fight evenly against Kei Xinyan was already Long Chen's victory. Han Yunshan's expression became exceedingly ugly. He hated Long Chen, and seeing so many people worried for him, he clenched his teeth. But he didn't dare to say a word in case he said a sensitive word and was attacked by Hua Xiu. After fighting intensely for an incense stick's worth of time without being able to suppress Long Chen, Kei Xinyan finally snorted, "You have a few tricks, but it's not enough. I suppose I'll let you see a rank 5 Celestial's true power. Spirit blood rocks the heavens." Buzz. Following Kei Xinyan's sneer, the power of his blood qi explosively grew. He had activated his spirit blood. The instant he activated his spirit blood, the web of runic chains behind him exploded. Broken bits scattered throughout all of heaven and earth. However, they didn't truly disappear. With his spirit blood activated, they had fully merged with every inch of heaven and earth, and were now imperceptible with the naked eye. Kei Xinyan's aura once more rose, causing the void to shake. It was like space was unable to bear his power. I bet you never imagined this, Long Chen. All that was before was nothing more than insignificant playtime. Only when a rank 5 Celestial fully activates their spirit blood can it count as truly fighting. Now I'll teach you what despair is, the despair an ant who can forever only look up at geniuses feels. This is absolute power, power that you couldn't hope to achieve even with 100 years of cultivation. The space around Kei Xinyan began to shine with blinding light. It was like a huge sun, and huge flame wings appeared on his back. He shot at Long Chen like a shooting star. Surprisingly, he had abandoned his flame blade and instead sent a punch at him. Fast, incomparably fast. Having activated his spirit blood, Kei Xinyan's speed and power had leaped immensely. There was no way for Long Chen to dodge. Boom. When Long Chen slashed Blood Drinker onto Kei Xinyan's fist, he saw concentrated blood-colored runes appear on his fist. They protected him, and in front of everyone's shocked gazes, Long Chen was sent flying hundreds of meters away. Haha, you're surprised, right? This is the Heavenly Dao armor formed from activating spirit blood with Heavenly Dao runes after merging with heaven and earth. Half my Heavenly Dao runes are merged with the world, absorbing energy from me, while the other half forms a set of armor around me. Not only can it block your attacks, but it even contains a rebound effect. Tell me, what qualifications does garbage from the wilds have to fight against me, a genius being helped even by the heavens? Laughed Kei Xinyan. The disciples watching were shocked. Even the rank 4 Celestials hadn't known there were so many secrets regarding rank 5 Celestials. In fact, Han Yunshan, Wei Changhai, and the other rank 5 Celestials were also shocked. Even amongst rank 5 Celestials, the difference could be so immense. This was the difference in foundations. Only the Central Plains rank 5 Celestials had the qualifications to receive such nurturing. Compared to the Central Plains disciples, they were too poor. This was the first time the Dragonblood warriors began to feel worried for Long Chen. The current Kei Xinyan was absolutely terrifying. His innate talent had already been high. Then adding on the Central Plains foundation, he had been turned into a monster by piling on the resources. As for Long Chen, he had been born destitute, and all his resources had to be gained through fighting with his life on the line. Furthermore, a great deal of the resources he obtained were given to the Dragonblood warriors. He not only needed to cultivate, but he also had to spend his time gathering resources. But Kei Xinyan was different. Whatever he wanted, he got. It was a completely unfair situation. Inferior trash, do you know why I'm not in a hurry to kill you? I want to see the expression of your helpless despair as you realize inferior ants should choose inferior ways of living. Suddenly, countless red chains flew out of Kei Xinyan's hand toward Long Chen. They whistled through the air, forming hurricanes as they flew. Long Chen hastily dodged. When the red chains struck the ground, their power directly broke the incredibly firm bricks. Damn, these bricks are even harder than treasure items when they're supported by the formation. But they were still broken. Startled cries rang out. Long Chen continuously dodged, but the red chains were like a rain of arrows continuously falling toward him. In truth, these red chains were Kei Xinyan's weaponized core flame after being merged with the power of his spirit blood. Boom! Countless chains pierced through the martial stage, and Kei Xinyan suddenly swung his arm. A torrent of bricks flew toward Long Chen. Long Chen slashed his saber out, breaking a few of them. But he had only just done that when a huge red hand formed in the air and wrapped around him. Long Chen was caught in its grasp. Startled cries rang out. The disciples all saw it clearly. The red chains first forced Long Chen to the defensive, then a heaven-encompassing attack blocked his vision. At that exact moment, the attack Kei Xinyan had been storing up was unleashed to capture Long Chen. The huge hand blocked their vision now, but they were sure Long Chen was caught inside. Quite a few maidens cried out, turning pale. "Ah, Long Chen, what do you have to say now? Damnable trash, what qualifications do you have to fight against me?" Kei Xinyan clenched the hand, smiling sinisterly. Everyone was deathly silent. Long Chen's life was in Kei Xinyan's hands. "Boss has been captured. We have to think of some way to save him," whispered Guyang. "Are you stupid or joking? Do you think Boss will be defeated so easily?" "Just watch quietly," said Guoran confidently. Tang Wana was also a bit pale, but seeing how confident Guoran was, she was slightly comforted. "Will Long Chen die?" Zhao Ziyan asked worriedly. "At present, that still isn't a problem. Don't you see the two dragons still fighting the flame leopard? That means it hasn't reached that critical point yet. However, my guess is that he can't last much longer anyhow." "To be able to force Kei Xinyan to activate his spirit blood is enough to be proud of," said Hua Xiyu. Long Chen's display truly surprised her. He wasn't even a celestial, but by using some strange techniques and powerful combat skills, he was able to force a rank 5 celestial to activate their spirit blood. It truly was admirable. However, the conclusion was basically foregone. Right now, Long Chen could only make some final struggles. His efforts would only stall for time. "Long Chen, I'll give you one chance. Kowtow to me 3 times, call me daddy, and call yourself trash. Then I can spare your life," said Kei Xinyan. Naturally, that was nonsense. He had no intention of killing Long Chen, as he didn't dare to. Once he killed Long Chen, he would have broken the sex rules and would be expelled. That price was too high. Although he had expressed an urge to kill him at the start, all his attacks had been merciful to make sure he didn't take his life. If he killed Long Chen, it would be troublesome. From the start, he had already decided to torment and humiliate Long Chen as much as possible. As long as no one came to stop him, he would torment Long Chen to the point where he was half dead to vent his anger at being slapped in the face. "Call you what?" Long Chen's voice rang out from within the flame hand. That voice was calm, without the slightest panic. "Daddy." Kei Xinyan truly lived up to his name. He thought Long Chen hadn't heard clearly and obediently said what Long Chen wanted him to say. "I, Long Chen, do not have a son like you. Don't call me that." Long Chen's voice dumbfounded everyone. What kind of time was it for him to play a game of tongues? Was he worried he hadn't infuriated Kei Xinyan enough to have him kill him? Bastard die. Kei Xinyan was enraged, and he tightened his hand. He was fiercely crushing Long Chen. "What bravado! You don't even have the courage to kill someone. You're trash with no guts at all. What happened to your determination when you killed all those innocent disciples? Now you say you want to kill me, but you don't dare to actually. All you are is a coward who can only bully the weak. You don't dare to kill me because you're afraid of being expelled from the Shintian Dao sect and losing your future, your dreams. But when you sneak attacked my flame dragon, did you once think about other people's futures and dreams? Did you once think of their fathers and mothers who are praying for them, waiting for them to return in glory? Do you know why they still continued despite knowing they might lose their lives at any moment? They put everything on the line just to change their own fates. You're the one who killed them, and you didn't even blink an eye. Furthermore, you use your filthy words to humiliate other people's dreams. When it's your turn, you hesitate like a bitch. Your dreams are dreams, but other people's dreams aren't. Just because you chose a good fetus to reincarnate into, You can trample over other people's dignity, ignore their dreams, and reap their lives? As Long Chen spoke, his voice grew louder and more emotional. It was full of fury and killing intent, and toward the end, it was a heaven-shaking roar. What kind of garbage magical art is this? It wants to bind me, Long Chen? Break. Boom. Suddenly, in front of everyone's stupefied gazes, the huge flame hand exploded, revealing Long Chen. The space around Long Chen was twisted as a terrifying pressure soared out of him. From a distance, it was like a sea was soaring into the sky. His robes and hair danced in the wind, and a blood-colored saber rested upon his shoulder. For stars revolved in his eyes, along with boundless killing intent. It was like a devil from hell had appeared on earth. Recall how K Xinyan is a homophone for stupid. Just his aura was able to break apart that flame hand. What kind of power is that? Countless disciples were filled with shock. That flame hand was condensed from K Xinyan's core flame, and the sharp attacks of his core flame previously had been incredibly powerful. Even Hua Shiyu, Hu Geshan, and the other rank 5 celestials were shocked. They were extremely clear on the strength of that flame hand, and that made them even more shocked than the other disciples. That flame hand was condensed through a magical art combining his core energy and his spirit blood. If Long Chen managed to break it by unleashing a full-strength attack, perhaps that would be understandable. But he hadn't done anything. Just his aura had caused the large hand to explode. The four-colored divine ring behind him began to revolve quicker. The faster it revolved, the stronger Long Chen's aura grew. In the end, the divine ring was circulating so fast that it appeared still. Long Chen's aura had reached an exceedingly terrifying level. The most terrifying thing about it was the will within it. That will was not targeted against anyone. It was a will to destroy the entire world. The Elder Hall Master smiled slightly upon seeing this incomparably fierce and powerful appearance. He stealthily glanced at the sky. There was nothing up there, but his smile grew wider. The Xian Master was currently hidden in the sky. Seeing the 4 stars circulating within Long Chen's eyes, his pupils shrank slightly. This is the aura possessed by cultivation techniques from before the immortal era. But in our current age, there's no way to be sure. An ancient voice rang out in the Xian Master's ears. An age from before the immortal era, that really is inconceivable. After that tribulation, the martial heaven continent was basically crippled, and its cultivation civilization was almost severed. Only a few smaller powers were lucky and managed to inherit a portion of the immortal era's arts. And the majority were incomplete. What terrifying luck Long Chen must have to be able to come into contact with something on that level. It seems this little fellow is hiding quite a few secrets, said the Xian Master. For something on that level, even if it's just an incomplete piece, or even just a decimal of a decimal, it would require great karmic luck to obtain. Otherwise, even if you obtained it, you would be implicated by that treasure and killed. This Long Chen was able to come into contact with a cultivation technique from before the immortal era, and he still hasn't died. Most likely, ever since he obtained it, his life was never very happy. All his karmic luck was sucked away by the treasure. And the greater the treasure, the more bad luck he'll have to suffer to pay the debt. Lu Tsang investigated his past and found that his life took a sudden turn when he was 15 years old. He should have obtained the treasure at that time. But a chi condensation brat can't possibly possess so much karmic luck. So whatever he obtained, it was just an extremely small portion of the inheritance, or he'd have died, sighed the voice. Then that's regretful. I like this little fellow's disposition. But his fate has already been entwined with the treasure he obtained. I can't help him. Unless he can one day make up for his overdraft karmic luck, then I could consider handing the Xiantian Dao sect to him, said the Xian Master. That's unrelated to me. I held the Xian Master position for over 8,000 years, and you finally arrived. The burden's yours now. As for who you pass the burden to, that's your matter. But I feel like you should consider it more if you want to hand it to Long Chen. He's not that dependable, warned the ancient voice. The Xian Master laughed. Master, you're already withdrawn from your post, so you don't need to worry about this. Since you've entrusted the Tao sect to me, you can just peacefully go into seclusion. I pulled you out of seclusion just to warn you about that little fellow. The reincarnation mirror also said that he is a double-edged blade. A mistake will cause great harm to the Xiantian Dao sect. So, I'm warning you, don't even think about running into seclusion because you're lazy. By the time we come out of seclusion, the Dao sect's doors will probably be permanently closed. Am I really that unreliable in your eyes? The Xian master smiled bitterly. Youngsters aren't as reliable as their elders, was the reply. Fine, I'll keep a close eye on things. Go into seclusion, said the Xian master helplessly. No one else heard the conversation between the Xian master and the patriarch. Everyone's attention was focused on the martial stage. Long Chen appeared like a devil from hell. He slowly walked toward a shocked Kei Xinyan. Die! Long Chen suddenly shot forward. Kei Xinyan's hair stood on end as he sensed a feeling of death. He was a true expert who had experienced life and death battles. Hence, his sense of danger was extremely sensitive. He knew that the current Long Chen had the power to kill him. That shocked him. He had never imagined that someone who wasn't even a celestial would possess the power to kill him. Blood Spirit Blaze Shield. Kei Xinyan suddenly took out a blood-colored shield. Countless runes revolved around it, and it released endless life force. Kei Xinyan is actually forced on the defensive. That Blood Spirit Blaze Shield is his strongest defensive art, said Hua Shiyu. Seeing Kei Xinyan be forced onto the defensive, Hua Shiyu, Hu Gushan, and the others were all shocked. Was Long Chen truly so powerful? Boom. Long Chen's saber slashed onto Kei Xinyan's shield. What? What shocked everyone was that this random blow from Long Chen actually tore through Kei Xinyan's shield. Kei Xinyan was forced 7 steps back, and with each step, the martial stage cracked. It was clear how powerful the force he was under was. 7 steps blew him 300 meters back. There were 7 large spiderweb cracks on the martial stage now. Split the heavens too. Kei Xinyan had only just stabilized when Long Chen appeared in the air, his saber slashing down. A mile-long saber image filled with an unstoppable air caused everyone's hearts to shake. As expected, it's the undefeatable Tao. Just his aura is able to steal away a person's will to resist, said an elder. Previously, they had been suspicious, but this attack confirmed those suspicions. Those who walk that path crumble far too easily. Practically, no one is able to raise such disciples, and even if they do, they need Tao protectors. But Long Chen doesn't meet any of those requirements, said another elder. Geniuses who chose the undefeatable Tao were all peerless heavenly geniuses. By maintaining a perfect record of never being defeated in the same realm, they cultured an undefeatable Tao heart. But it was too difficult to maintain a perfect record. Just one loss was enough to cause their Tao heart to crumble. They would be afflicted by a heart devil and would essentially be crippled. There were few geniuses who chose that path, and their sects found it extremely difficult to raise them. As a result, it was almost impossible to find a disciple who chose to cultivate the undefeatable Tao. And such people needed Tao protectors by their side to prevent enemies from sneak attacking them while they were still too weak. If they encountered others in the same realm who they weren't assured of defeating, the Tao protectors would prevent a battle from occurring. But Long Chen couldn't possibly meet such conditions. A disciple with no background couldn't possibly walk the undefeatable Tao. But this undefeatable will unleashed by Long Chen's attack was undoubtable. Even the disciples felt a great deal of pressure. Blood Spirit 10,000 Beast Shield. Seeing Long Chen's saber slashing at him as quick as lightning, Kei Xinyan roared and clapped his hands together. A supreme shield formed before him. This shield had countless designs of beasts carved into it. It was like it was alive, and bestial roars came from it. Just looking at this shield gave people an urge to give up on fighting Kei Xinyan. For them to attack this shield would be like an ant trying to shake a tree. This was Kei Xinyan's greatest defensive skill. Even Hua Shiyu hadn't known about it, as Kei Xinyan had been hoping to crush Long Chen while holding back as much as possible. That was because in his eyes, Long Chen wasn't worth anything. His opponents were his fellow heavenly geniuses like Hua Shiyu and Hu Guishan, and his trump cards were supposed to be used to deal with them. But now, he couldn't hold back anymore. Boom. The blood-colored saber slashed into his huge shield, releasing surging chi waves. The saber image and shield exploded at the same time. Countless runes filled the martial stage. Eventually they faded, revealing the two of them. Countless people couldn't help letting out cold gasps. When the runes finally faded, it revealed Long Chen with his saber resting on his shoulder, expressionlessly staring at the person in front of him. The stage in front of Long Chen was a complete mess. The bricks had all exploded, revealing a metallic foundation. The bricks were just ornamental. Now it revealed the true core of the platform, and it was incomparably sturdy. The martial stage looked like a mural that had been torn open. In front of Long Chen was Kei Xinyan. He stood there motionless. Drip, drip, drip. Beads of blood descended from the space between Kei Xinyan's forehead to his nose and then dripped onto the ground. Flowers of blood rapidly bloomed on the ground below him. The disciples outside all looked at the martial stage in shock. Long Chen's attack had actually broken Kei Xinyan's shield and injured him. That was different from the previous face slap. This had been a true collision of power without the slightest technique. Ha ha ha. But unexpectedly, Kei Xinyan suddenly raised his head and laughed. With his messed up hair, he looked like he had gone insane. Good Long Chen. You really surprised me. I didn't think you were hiding so many trump cards, disguising yourself as a pig to eat the tiger. I admit I underestimated you, said Kei Xinyan. The blood dripping down his face made him appear even more sinister. I, Long Chen, never disguise myself as a pig to eat the tiger. That's just a senseless game. Those who can eat tigers have no need to disguise themselves as pigs. The only one trying to disguise themselves as a pig is you. Are you planning on still holding back and being a pig? If you are, then I don't mind being a butcher, said Long Chen. What? The disciples were startled. According to Long Chen, it seemed Kei Xinyan was still holding back. Furthermore, it seemed that even Long Chen was holding back. Then what had been that terrifying fight? A warm-up? Ah, since you want to die, I'll let you die in peace. I'll show you my true power. Boom. The flame leopard fighting against the lightning and flame dragons suddenly vanished. When it once more appeared, it was behind Kei Xinyan. Flame Ancestor Heaven Merging Art. A golden rune suddenly lit up on Kei Xinyan's forehead. At the same time, an identical golden rune lit up on the flame leopard's head. Rumbling filled the air as the huge flame leopard was slowly absorbed by Kei Xinyan. Countless runes began to shine on Kei Xinyan's body, and he became like a blazing sun. A terrifying aura also surged into the sky. In that instant, intense heat waves suddenly erupted, and the disciples were caught off guard. A few of them who didn't flee fast enough had their clothes catch on fire. These heat waves completely ignored their heavenly Tao energy. With their defenses bypassed, quite a few people ended up but naked. As Kei Xinyan merged with his earth flame beast, Long Chen hastily retreated. He also summoned Lei Long and Hua Long to his side. He had known Kei Xinyan was still hiding a trump card, but he hadn't thought he would be able to merge with his earth flame beast. His current aura was still rapidly growing, and it had already reached a terrifying level. Those heat waves were like erupting lava. Heavens, the martial stage's bricks are deforming, melting from the heat. Following one person's cry, everyone hastily looked and saw that, as expected, the bricks on the martial stage now appeared like lard. If I was on the martial stage, I'd probably be dead without a corpse, said a rank 4 celestial. Within that space, let alone fighting, he wouldn't even be able to exist. Long Chen's dead now. He actually made Kei Xinyan show off his final trump card. I wonder if he'll end up dying accidentally, said Hu Guishan. Fan Song nodded. They were all holding back their strongest trump cards and wouldn't use them easily. Those were their killing moves against powerful opponents. Once such a move was exposed, others would be able to study their weak points and come up with counters. Then their killing blows would be ineffective. For Long Chen to force Kei Xinyan to reveal this precious move, it was clear that Kei Xinyan's hatred for Long Chen had reached a pinnacle. Even if he didn't kill Long Chen, he would definitely cripple him. Whether it was Hua Shiyu, Hu Greishan, Fan Song, or Wang Zhen, they had yet to reveal their true power, and their trump cards were still secret. Now, the four of them were prepared for Kei Xinyan's trump cards, and so he would end up at an immense disadvantage in their future competitions. Boom. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted. They had no choice but to turn away. When the light slowly faded and everyone looked back at the martial stage, they were shocked by what they saw. Kei Xinyan was covered in flames. His head had completely transformed. It was now a leopard's head with fangs protruding out of its mouth and scarlet eyes. As for his hands and feet, long claws had grown out of them. Most shocking of all, he now had a lengthy tail. He had turned into a flame monster. Long Chen, do you see this? This is my strongest state. As for before, I wasn't even using half my power. I like to see people with hopeful expressions right before I thrust them into despair. Now tell me, what are you going to use to fight me? The monstrous Kei Xinyan still managed to speak, but his voice had completely transformed. It sounded like metal clashing against metal and was painful to listen to. Everyone looked toward Long Chen. But the expression of shock and despair they had expected was nowhere to be found. You truly are powerful, said Long Chen indifferently. Are you afraid? It's too late. Kei Xinyan suddenly shot forward. The martial stage trembled intensely, and Kei Xinyan appeared in front of Long Chen in an instant, a fist smashing down. What speed? Long Chen narrowed his eyes. Kei Xinyan's speed had multiplied after entering this monstrous state. Long Chen was almost unable to track him with his eyes. Long Chen shot to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack. But just as he was preparing to counterattack, Kei Xinyan seemed to teleport, appearing in front of him again. Boom. Long Chen barely managed to swing Blood Drinker halfway before Kei Xinyan's fist smashed into his chest. He wildly vomited blood and shot back like a shooting star, smashing into the barrier. Boss, cried the Dragon Blood warriors. The current Kei Xinyan was actually too strong for Long Chen. Long Chen, I said that I'd crush you like a dog. Kei Xinyan laughed sinisterly and shot after Long Chen once more. The disciples outside let out startled cries. If such a terrifying attack struck Long Chen again in his already injured state, it was very likely for a life to be lost. But what none of them expected was that the sight of Long Chen being smashed into pieces never appeared. Instead, a scale-covered hand caught the flame fist. What? No one could believe their eyes. Just now, Long Chen had been heavily injured and vomiting blood. But now he was standing, a hand tightly holding Kei Xinyan's fist. Long Chen's hand was covered in green scales. They rapidly spread down his arm. Kei Xinyan was shocked. He had never imagined Long Chen would possess the power to block his attack. He tried several times, but he was unable to pull back his hand. Kei Xinyan reflexively swung out his other fist. As a result, Long Chen caught it with his other hand. Their arms were locked together. I wasn't finished speaking before. You truly are powerful. If I hadn't devoured one of your earth flame beasts, I really might not have been your match, said Long Chen. Dragon scales continued to spread over his whole body. That was an extremely strange sight that dumbfounded the disciples outside. They hadn't thought that even at this time, Long Chen had been holding back. Idiot, are you saying you're my match now? Kei Xinyan's leopard mouth suddenly opened, and a blazing flame arrow shot at Long Chen's head. This attack formed so suddenly that it made everyone jump. If this arrow struck at such close range while boosted with his spirit blood, Long Chen really might die. But just as Kei Xinyan's arrow formed, Long Chen fiercely pushed his arms to the side. He sent a kick straight up at Kei Xinyan's jaw. As a result, the flame arrow shot upward, smashing into the barrier. The barrier trembled intensely, while Kei Xinyan was sent flying. I dislike people who spout crap from their mouths. Since you've taken out your trump card, I won't hide mine any longer. Green Dragon Battle Armor. The green scales finally covered every inch of Long Chen's body. In that instant, a grand, domineering, noble aura erupted, one that looked down on all others. When Long Chen summoned the complete green dragon battle armor, a spiritual pressure erupted that caused everyone's expressions to change. Whether it was the disciples, the elders, or the hall masters, they felt a reverence that originated from the depths of their souls. This is true dragon pressure. Green Drake and White Drake were telling the truth. He truly possesses the essence blood of a true dragon. The hidden Xian master nodded to himself. The Green Drake and White Drake he was talking about were the two 10th-rank Xian beasts who had been standing at the top of the Xiantian staircase during the trial for outer sect disciples. Long Chen's body was covered in green dragon scales. Waves of spiritual pressure came out of the barrier, and some disciples actually began to kneel on the ground one by one. Over 1,000 disciples knelt on the ground. The other disciples didn't understand, but the elders knew. Those disciples were ancient race disciples. The blood of Xian beasts flowered in their bodies, and under the pressure of dragon blood, they involuntarily knelt. There was no way for them to resist that instinct. As for the humans, they merely felt some pressure and it was not so direct. So they were a bit better off. Suddenly, a light cracking sound rang out. People looked at the martial stage to see that the bricks had long since disappeared. Now, only the foundation remained, and that foundation was starting to crack right where Long Chen was standing. Heavens, how strong is he? Kei Xinyan's flames after transforming into a flame monster had already melted the bricks with its abnormal power. But even those flames hadn't been able to damage the foundation. Are you prepared? I'm about to attack. Long Chen leaned forward slightly, and suddenly, a thunderous pitch rang out. He shot out like a bolt of lightning, his fists smashing toward Kei Xinyan. There was no technique, no flowery appearance. It was a pure and simple punch, and yet it locked down heaven and earth, making it completely unavoidable. Arrogance. Do you think I, Kei Xinyan, am afraid of the likes of you? Boom. Kei Xinyan's flames roared out, following his own fist. When their two fists collided, the entire martial stage shook violently. Powerful chi waves surged out, striking against the barrier. The barrier swayed and suddenly, a slight wave exploded out of it, striking the disciples. The disciples closest to the barrier immediately vomited blood and were knocked back, causing chaos amongst the crowd. The barrier blocked 90% of the shockwave's power, but it still managed to injure people. These two disciples are truly powerful, praised an elder. Those disciples climbed up in the distance, all of them pale from terror. Without the barrier, they would have been killed. Looking at the barrier, they saw that the two of them were still locked in combat. Both their fists were still striking at the other, and the space around them was twisting wildly. A sphere of light gradually formed around their fists. The two of them were clearly increasing their power rapidly. Suddenly, their other fists also collided together. The martial stage became covered in cracks, and those cracks rapidly grew. Finally, the martial stage could no longer bear their power, and it collapsed. A huge hole appeared where the two of them were, but they were still facing off in the same posture. It was a simple competition of power. A fiery expression appeared in Fan Song's eyes as he watched this exchange. He unconsciously clenched his fists. He specialized in power, and watching them compete like this, his own hands grew itchy. At this time, Kei Xinyan's expression was twisted and sinister like a wild beast. But what startled the disciples was that Long Chen's expression was still calm, as if this wasn't very taxing to him. In terms of power, you've already lost completely. Can you still not tell? Said Long Chen after a while. Bullshit, I have plenty of power left, roared Kei Xinyan. You really are an idiot. If I had wanted to kill you from the start, I could have slain you in one shot at least 3 times already. You didn't even notice this? Long Chen shook his head. Long Chen's words caused all the disciples to feel shocked. Those words were too arrogant, weren't they? 3 times? Killed in one shot? But Long Chen's current power didn't seem any weaker than a rank 5 celestial at this time. According to reason, he had no reason to say such easily exposed bragging. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? You want to use such a fake lie to shake my confidence? Sneered Kei Xinyan. Long Chen shook his head. Whether you believe it or not is up to you. The reason I didn't kill you and allowed you to show off, to increase your power bit by bit, well, the reason is actually quite similar to your own. You wanted to enjoy the sight of my pain or my despair. But what I wanted was to give other people hope and confidence. I want to show everyone that even without talent, even without powerful backers, even without a rich daddy, as long as you work hard, you can still become strong. A person who calls himself a genius and likes to trample others will eventually be trampled on one day. Today, I let you properly put on your act just so I could trample you perfectly. And after trampling you, I'll be using your head as a sacrifice to those brothers whose dreams and aspirations were cut short by you. Long Chen's voice was extremely calm, almost as if he was recounting a story set in stone. But it was as shocking as thunder in other people's ears. So he really was serious. His agreement to the Hallmaster had been nothing more than bait to get Kei Xinyan onto the martial stage. He was going to kill him regardless of the rules. Those disciples who had been protected by the Dragonblood warriors turned red-eyed. Such a chivalrous person made them incomparably moved. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, don't kill this bastard. It's not worth you being expelled from the sect, cried a disciple. There's no need to shout. They can't hear you inside anyways. Furthermore, no one can change the things that boss decides on. Just watch. Guo Ran waved his hand. Long Chen treats your words as nothing more than farts. It's all because of how your elder hall raises people. The law enforcement hall master didn't forget to insult to the elder hall master. As for the elder hall master, his expression didn't even twitch. It was like he hadn't even heard him. He was completely focused on the figure on the martial stage. Kei Xinyan was roaring furiously and unleashing his full power now, but he was unable to shake Long Chen in the slightest. Instead, Long Chen's power was growing faster than his own. Boom. Finally, Kei Xinyan was forced back a step, and as a result, the martial stage once more crumbled. Long Chen pressed forward like he was pushing a cart. Kei Xinyan was forced to fall back, and with each step he took, the ground shattered. Even the elders were no longer able to stay calm. Just how was Long Chen so powerful? They were unaware that as Long Chen's cultivation base increased, the power of the Green Dragon battle armor also increased. Even Long Chen didn't know how strong he was. At this time, Kei Xinyan was still trying to compete with Long Chen in brute power, the thing he specialized in the most. As a result, Kei Xinyan was repeatedly forced back. The disciples watching were unable to believe their eyes. Although Kei Xinyan was the one who appeared like a monster right now, it was Long Chen who they viewed as the more terrifying monster. Bastard, since you want to die, don't blame me. Kei Xinyan roared. The rune on his forehead suddenly spread and covered his whole body. That rune began to burn. In that instant, it was like a volcano that had been sealed for 10,000 years was finally erupting. Boom. The ground exploded. Long Chen was instantly sent flying back by Kei Xinyan's new power. Has he gone crazy? He ignited his spirit blood. Even the icy Wang Zhen was filled with disbelief. As peak experts who had reached the realm of merging with heaven and earth, he and the others naturally knew what Kei Xinyan was doing. This was no ordinary ignition of his spirit blood. In the state of merging with heaven and earth, igniting his spirit blood was also igniting his core runes. It was an extremely destructive technique. Now, not only would the purity of his spirit blood drop, but his core would also be injured. Both were as precious as one's life to celestials. Was it worth it for him to ignite his spirit blood for a moment of transcendent power? Die! Roared Kei Xinyan. He attacked Long Chen with a huge flame blade. Long Chen snorted and Blood Drinker once more appeared in his hand. Boom, boom, boom. Each time their weapons collided, the ground would explode. The martial stage had been turned into a completely unrecognizable state. Their two figures continued to clash within the barrier, appearing like two shooting stars repeatedly crashing against each other. Each collision shook heaven and earth. The disciples watching were all terrified. They had never seen such a fierce battle before. A battle on this intensity completely dazzled them, and it continued for a full hour. The stage within the barrier had vanished completely, but the two of them were still fighting. "Bastard, hurry up and die." Kei Sinyan's flame blade suddenly transformed. It grew explosively and took on a red shade like blood. With boundless killing intent, all the energy of heaven and earth was instantly sucked away by it. Blood blaze annihilation slash. The huge blade descended from the sky. This was Kei Sinyan's most powerful attack. Once he used it, his aura clearly dropped a great deal. "I don't have much spiritual yuan left. Then let's decide victory or defeat with this move." Long Chen clenched his teeth. He raised Blood Drinker, the energy within his 4 Cs pouring through 27 acupuncture points. A blood-red saber image rose into the sky. "Split the heavens 3. Within that barrier, 2 huge blood-red saber images clashed with apocalyptic power. The barrier was instantly filled with red light, and it became impossible to see anything within. Boom. Only after a moment did the explosion ring out. That barrier inflated like a balloon, growing to several times its original size in an instant. The disciples jumped in fright and hastily fled. If the barrier exploded, they wouldn't even have a corpse left. Fortunately, after expanding violently, the barrier didn't explode. It slowly returned to its original size. 2 figures panted for breath within the barrier. Long Chen's saber was propped against the ground, his face pale. The third form of Split the Heavens was incomparably sharp, but its exhaustion was also terrifying. Long Chen's spiritual yuan had basically reached rock bottom, which startled him. Kei Sinyan had such plentiful spiritual yuan that even 4 Qi Cs weren't enough to outspend him. But then thinking about it, he supposed that made sense. Kei Sinyan was a celestial, and after merging with heaven and earth, he was able to constantly draw out the energy of the world to fight. Kei Sinyan was crazily panting. The rune covering his body had dimmed, and his aura had dropped precipitously. Long Chen took a deep breath and raised his saber. After stabilizing his aura slightly, he began to walk toward Kei Sinyan. "Even now, he still wants to fight?" cried the disciples. Kei Sinyan also took a deep breath and straightened his waist. He took control of the last dregs of his spiritual yuan as the critical moment arrived. "Kill!" Long Chen and Kei Sinyan roared at the same time. Long Chen's saber collided heavily with Kei Sinyan's flame blade. Both sides were sent flying by each other's power, and their auras dropped once more. Heavenly net meteor fall. Kei Sinyan formed hand seals, and the flames around him disappeared, replaced by a huge flame sphere that shot toward Long Chen. The flame sphere was originally just a couple dozen meters wide, but halfway, it suddenly grew by 10 times, releasing a raging rumbling sound as it flew through the air. Long Chen knew this was Kei Sinyan's combination attack with his earth flame beast. Without even thinking about, he activated the 2 dragon tattoos on his arms. Double dragon destruction. Lei Long and Hua Long flew out, crashing together with the flame sphere. Flames and lightning raged in the air. Long Chen and Kei Sinyan were both sent flying once more, vomiting blood and their bodies almost collapsing. After that collision, people were startled to see that whether it was Kei Sinyan's earth flame beast or Long Chen's lightning and flame dragons, they had all shrunk a great deal. The 2 dragons were only 300 meters long now, while Kei Sinyan's flame leopard was only the size of an ordinary magical beast. Both sides had used up too much of their power, and in order to avoid their bodies dissipating, they had no choice but to condense their remaining energy into smaller forms. The 2 dragons tore at the flame leopard, while the flame leopard retaliated with its life on the line. But compared to their previous fight, it was now like 3 children scuffling. There was no power to speak of. That collision had heavily injured Long Chen and Kei Sinyan. However, Long Chen was a bit better off since his physical body was his strong point. With his thick skin, his injuries weren't that bad. The primal chaos space's trees had already withered. Thus, there was no way for him to extract more life energy from them to heal. Long Chen found that his body had already grown to a level where these trees were no longer able to keep up with his demands. Just healing a few smaller injuries completely exhausted their energy. As for Kei Sinyan, he was worse off. He had already sent out his earth flame beast with that attack, so he hadn't been protected by it. He had needed to exhaust his little remaining spiritual yuan to protect himself. But because he had ignited his core runes already, the amount of energy he could absorb from heaven and earth had dropped greatly. As a result, this attack had almost shattered all his bones. Bite it. Long Chen struggled up and ordered Lei Long and Hua Long. The two dragons immediately ignored their opponent's attack and wrapped themselves around it as hard as they could. Following that, a strange thing occurred. The flame leopard disappeared along with the lightning and flame dragons. Kei Xinyan's expression instantly changed, because at that moment, he lost his spiritual connection with his earth flame beast. Long Chen, you really are looking to die, roared Kei Xinyan. He knew this was definitely done by Long Chen. He had taken away his earth flame beast. His guess was correct. Perhaps if his earth flame beast still had its energy, Long Chen wouldn't have been able to do anything to it, but now, it was weak, unable to bear another blow. With Lei Long and Hua Long's help, Long Chen had drawn it into the primal chaos space. As soon as the flame leopard entered the primal chaos space, it seemed to sense something and became motionless, not daring to move. Hua Long did not hesitate to go devour it, but it was stopped by Long Chen. He had Lei Long and Hua Long keep watch over it. Now wasn't the time to handle it yet, as he had more pressing things to do. Holding Blood Drinker, Long Chen slowly walked toward Kei Xinyan. Although his hair was messy, his robes were torn, and blood was all over his body, he didn't seem sloppy. Instead, he seemed to possess a wild, domineering air as well as a wanton grandness. Seeing Long Chen walk over to Kei Xinyan, everyone's hearts rose into their throats. Looking at that wild and domineering figure, as well as that blood-red saber resting on his shoulder, it was like they were watching the advancement of a death god. Is he really going to kill him? That was the question resounding in people's minds. Looking at the current situation, Long Chen had taken an absolute advantage. They could all see a trace of fear within Kei Xinyan's enraged expression. Although his face was twisted like a monster, it gave people a feeling like he was trying to cover up his inner fear. When Long Chen reached Kei Xinyan, without a word, he slashed his saber down. Kei Xinyan used his final bit of energy to condense a flame shield. When struck, his shield exploded and he tumbled back miserably, vomiting blood. Long Chen also didn't have it that well off. The backlash caused Blood Drinker to fly out of his grasp. It clanked and fell to the ground. Meanwhile, the wounds all over his body opened once more. Those wounds were from their previous exchange. He was no longer able to forcibly suppress them, and they began to bleed profusely. Long Chen picked up Blood Drinker with his left hand and rested it against his shoulder. His right hand was now numb and couldn't lift it. The same as last time, Long Chen began to walk over to Kei Xinyan with the exact same rhythm. The sound of his steps was like an overture of death. Kei Xinyan crawled up and immediately vomited a mouthful of blood. He was pale as paper. Having ignited a great deal of his essence blood and core energy, he was in a terrible situation now. He didn't have the slightest bit of energy left in his body. Looking at Long Chen walking over to him without a word, Kei Xinyan felt like Long Chen was an emotionless death god who had come to reap his life. Long Chen, I don't believe you dare to kill me. If you dare dash, Kei Xinyan's words were cut off by Long Chen's advancing saber. It was aimed at Kei Xinyan's neck, but in his exhausted state, Long Chen ended up deviating from his planned path, while Kei Xinyan also instinctively dodged. As a result, his saber struck Kei Xinyan's chest. If it was a normal time, Long Chen's saber could blow Kei Xinyan to pieces. But now, his attack had no power behind it, only leaving behind a deep cut. Long Chen's body wobbled slightly as he felt a wave of exhaustion washing over him. He took a deep breath and adjusted himself. Once more resting Blood Drinker on his shoulder, he pressed onward toward Kei Xinyan. But the people watching could all see that Long Chen had already reached his limit a while ago. At this time, his saber was constantly quivering in his grasp. However, Long Chen's expression was still calm. No one further questioned Long Chen's resolve to kill Kei Xinyan. Long Chen, you won't have a good ending if you kill me. You'll be expelled. Kei Xinyan was finally afraid. Now he understood that Long Chen's words at the beginning had been an oath to himself. Long Chen's goal wasn't to humiliate him or force him to surrender. It was purely to kill him. I know. Long Chen's indifferent voice was so calm that it was frightening. Then why do you still want to kill me? Roared Kei Xinyan. To give an explanation to those who died, said Long Chen. They weren't your relatives or your friends. Why do you have to do this? Roared Kei Xinyan. Because they once trusted me with their lives, said Long Chen. The disciples beside the Dragon Blood warriors were unable to make a sound anymore. They had never imagined that they would meet someone who would give up his core disciple spot and even give up his life to get revenge for some fallen brothers just because of this one moment of trust. They felt like even if they had to die immediately, their lives had been worthwhile now. At this moment, they understood the true reason why the Dragon Blood warriors called him boss. It was because Long Chen truly viewed every one of the people who followed him as a brother. 4 hot-blooded men, crying was a weak display, and yet these displays couldn't help themselves. And no one laughed at them for it. Bastard, you're going to throw away your future just because of this. If you wanted to humiliate me, if you wanted to establish your name, you've already done it. Just what do you want? Shouted Kei Xinyan. To kill you, said Long Chen. As he got closer, he slowly raised Blood Drinker. No, you can't kill me. Kei Xinyan roared unwillingly. This is the price of trampling over other people's dreams and lives. Actions have consequences. Long Chen shook his head, and Blood Drinker flashed with a cold light. It thrust straight toward Kei Xinyan's head. The word for boss means biggest brother. Seeing Long Chen's saber stab toward Kei Xinyan's forehead, the disciples outside all let out startled cries. Kei Xinyan's spirit blood was exhausted. He had no way to circulate heavenly Tao energy, and he had no spiritual yuan. Once pierced, with no energy to protect his soul, he really would die. A rank 5 celestial was about to die just like this? No one had expected things to develop to this point. The Hall Master was already gripping the chessboard. He was just about to take action when the Xian Master's voice rang out in his head. No need. Just at this moment, Long Chen's saber reached Kei Xinyan's head. The sharp tip easily pierced Kei Xinyan's skin and continued forward. But just as his saber was about to pierce Kei Xinyan's brain, a light suddenly erupted from Kei Xinyan's head. He vanished. A life-protecting talisman, cried a few elders in shock. So it was still a failure. This, goddamn, luck. Long Chen was no longer able to keep hold of Blood Drinker. It fell to the ground. At the same time, he felt the world spinning around him. His vision darkened and he fainted. He had never felt so tired. Fainting felt like a blessing. Within the endless darkness, Long Chen felt a kind of peace. Within this darkness, there was nothing for him to worry or to think about. He felt completely relaxed. Long Chen, can you hear my call? Suddenly, a voice rang out within Long Chen's soul. That was a very familiar voice. Who are you? Asked Long Chen. There's no need to ask that question. All you need to know is that you are the son of fate. Millions of lives rest in your hands. Hurry and grow stronger, or it will be too late, pressed that voice. What will be too late? Can you not explain it clearly? Raged Long Chen. Even now, he didn't know what this voice was or what it was talking about. You're too weak right now. If you were noticed, you'd be immediately killed. Take advantage of while they still haven't noticed you to grow, or everything will be destroyed. That voice did not answer his question. Do you have something wrong with your brain? Don't just tell half the story, roared Long Chen. Only getting little bits and pieces like this was driving him mad. Long Chen, what you need to do is dash. That voice suddenly vanished. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Roared Long Chen. What do you mean, what am I doing? I'm healing you. A female voice rang out, one that contained some anger. The darkness had vanished. Long Chen was lying on a bed, with a green-robed woman glaring at him. Sorry. Where am I? Apologized Long Chen. He looked around and saw that he was in a simple room with all kinds of instruments that he didn't know the purpose of. Long Chen, you're awake. Suddenly, a burst of fragrance attacked him. Tang Wanna rushed over to his side. I just checked him. He's basically fine. You can leave whenever, said that green-robed woman before taking her leave. Speak, pervert, did you exploit her? Tang Wan'er suspiciously stared at Long Chen. What are you talking about? She's not even 1,000th as pretty as you. Long Chen smiled. Dislikable. Tang Wan'er hit Long Chen, but she blushed with some rarely seen charm. Long Chen laughed mischievously inside. Hee, I can handle her with just a sentence now. It could be said that he was completely clear on Tang Wan'er's temperament now. Although she was fiery, she still had the thoughts of a woman. If he didn't get on her nerves so often, her temper wouldn't be so explosive. Did that fellow die? Asked Long Chen. You're a fool. You almost provoked a calamity because you wanted to kill him. Can you not be more calm-headed? Tang Wan'er's eyes reddened slightly, as she was deeply worried about him. Cough, you can't blame that on me. Looking at how much of a show-off he was, if I didn't cut him down, it would have been unworthy of his display. So, what happened in the end? Asked Long Chen. Tang Wan'er rebuked. You scoundrel, you really infuriate me. Just as you were about to kill Kei Xinyan, he activated a life-protecting talisman within his body. He was teleported away, and the Elder Hall Master had to use the Xiantian Jade Board to find him again. When he found him, he was unconscious, and just like you, he was sent to the healing hall. Senior Apprentice Sister Mu Qingxian personally came to heal you, so you have to properly thank her. She spent a great deal of time and energy to heal you. Long Chen nodded. His powerful physical body required an immense amount of life energy to heal once it was injured. Mu Qingxian had probably ended up using her core energy to allow him to heal so quickly. Long Chen's eyes suddenly brightened. Then is Kei Xinyan right next door? What are you thinking? You better be more well-behaved for me, warned Tang Wan'er. Am I that kind of person? I just want to see if he's well, said Long Chen. Who would believe you? Let me tell you, this matter was personally suppressed by the Xian Master, so don't you dare cause it to erupt again. Even the Xian Master was disturbed? Of course. You ignored the sect's rules and tried to kill a fellow disciple. The Law Enforcement Hall Master declared that he had to heavily punish you using torture tools as an example for the other disciples. But a portion of the elders said that while you might have gone against the rules, you didn't succeed in the end and it wasn't a grave offense, so it should be forgivable. Well, the main thing was that those elders wanted to be lenient to a genius like you. The Law Enforcement Hall immediately turned hostile and said that you had to be handed to them, as this matter was their responsibility and others couldn't interfere. The Xian Master had to personally send out orders to revoke your core disciple position and downgrade you to an inner sect disciple in order to get them to shut their mouths, said Tang Wan'er. That Law Enforcement Hall Master is just an idiot, cursed Long Chen viciously. No matter how he looked at that old bastard, he saw nothing good about him. Long Chen, you have to calm down. We still haven't established ourselves in the Dao sect. Thus, it's extremely unfavorable to make strong enemies now. Just leave the matter with Kei Xinyan alone, persuaded Tang Wan'er. Long Chen shook his head. You know who I am. I always act according to my heart, and I definitely can't let Kei Xinyan off after he killed so many innocent disciples. But don't worry, I wasn't able to fight him to the death this time, so next time, I'll play him to death within the rules. I guarantee I won't cause you any more worry. Seeing how solemnly Long Chen promised, Tang Wan'er could only helplessly nod along. Long Chen was conceding as much as he was willing to her. Following this, Long Chen asked about the Dragonblood Legion. Tang Wan'er told him that although he had been stripped of his core disciple position, he had still retained the right to establish his own faction due to the special circumstances. Those other disciples who he had led in the inner sect trial had all joined him, and so their faction had instantly exploded in size. Tang Wan'er still wasn't used to seeing so many faces. But the comforting thing was that those new disciples were all extremely obedient due to their gratitude toward Long Chen. So despite the leap in numbers, it was still easy to handle things. Long Chen couldn't help but sigh. In the beginning, he had felt a burst of compassion and been unwilling to see that group of abandoned disciples be killed in the trial. He hadn't originally been thinking about expanding the Dragonblood Legion. But now, that probably wasn't something that he could decide. He couldn't refuse so many sincere faces. Although these disciples had lower talent and power, their loyalty was no problem at all. It was just that there were too many of them, and Long Chen felt the pressure increase. From Tang Wana, Long Chen learned he had been unconscious for 7 days. During this week, quite a few things had happened. Tang Wana had been in charge of the Dragonblood Legion. She had first gone to register their faction, and then there had been procedures to follow. Fortunately, this kind of structure was something Tang Wana had already experienced in the 108th monastery, and so she was able to handle things smoothly. During the procedures, she had met with some conflicts with the Divine Beast Mansion, Hegemon Hall, and Flame Gate's disciples, but in the end, she decided to endure, and so no huge battles erupted. Fuck, I bet their faces are getting itchy again. They're just waiting for me to slap them, cursed Long Chen. His battle with Kei Xinyan had given him a warning. His own foundation was much weaker than theirs. When it came to true combat power, he probably wouldn't have been Kei Xinyan's match if he hadn't already handled one of his Earth Flame beasts before the fight. If Kei Xinyan had merged with the power of 2 Earth Flames, then to defeat him would have required Long Chen to actually risk his life. He wouldn't have been able to win so reliably through pure power. However, the stronger the opponent, the more excited he felt. Only by fighting against experts could he find where he was still lacking and how he could improve. Only when there was pressure was there motivation. Tang Wana continued to tell him about what had happened, and what made Long Chen particularly moved was that the new 13,000 disciples didn't go exchange their points to get pills, weapons, or techniques. Instead, they gave them all to Tang Wana. At that time, Tang Wana had been stunned. The faction's job was to distribute benefits to its disciples to make the faction more cohesive. There had never been a faction that took in the disciples' points. Tang Wana hadn't accepted, and so those disciples had said that their lives were the Dragonblood Legions. Their everything was the Dragonblood Legions. They were simple words, but Long Chen could feel their sincerity and trust. He was extremely moved. Trust had to be mutual. These are good problems. Tomorrow, I'll go out and think of a way to get points, said Long Chen. His family had grown bigger, and he had more mouths to feed. Since they had chosen to follow him, he wouldn't let them suffer through hard times. You probably won't have time. You've missed several days of basic courses, so you'll have to go to class tomorrow, said Tang Wana. What? Long Chen couldn't believe his ears. Within a classroom in the Shentian Dao sect, there was a strict-looking elder loudly reading off a scroll he was holding. There were tens of thousands of disciples sitting in front of the elder, all of them with solemn expressions as they seriously listened to his reading. In the past few days, whether it was the inner sect disciples or outer sect disciples, they had all been going to class. According to the Shentian Dao sect's traditions, the disciples all had alternate lectures with over 100 teachers. Those lectures were extremely diverse, and they contained information about martial tactics, formations, forging arts, runes, alchemy, divining the future, healing, etc. There were over 100 all-encompassing topics. The most shocking thing was that there were even zither, chess, scholar, and painting cultivation methods, and there were even some cultivation professions they had never heard of. For example, singing, dancing, etc. They had never heard of cultivators doing such things for a living. During these days, they had been listening to the teachers presenting the arts that they were most proficient in. This was to allow the disciples to consider their own skills, interests, and aptitudes so that they could decide which direction their future cultivation would take. It went without saying that the Shentian Dao sect's foundation was absolutely shocking. As long as you thought of something, you could find a teacher specialized in it. And even if you couldn't think of it, you would have a teacher for it. As for the current elder, he was a veteran beast tamer. First he discussed some foundational knowledge, as well as introducing the pros and cons of beast tamers, and then he introduced some overlord-level existences that were recorded in ancient history. Those were house pets that beast tamers would long to obtain even in their dreams. The tens of thousands of disciples were all listening with rapt attention. Only one person was absent-minded as his mind rapidly worked. Long Chen had long since grown tired of listening to this elder drone on and on. This rule of the Tao sect was extremely irritating. Even if you weren't a beast tamer and had no intention of choosing that profession, you had to listen to this class. The elder's voice went in through Long Chen's left ear and out through his right. The only thing he was thinking about was how to make money. Yesterday, Tang Wan'er had told him that in the Xintian Tao sect, points were even harder to obtain than in the Eastern Wasteland's 108th monastery. Inner sect disciples only got 100 points a month. Outer sect disciples only got 10. Furthermore, 5 of those points could only be obtained through working and completing missions. If they failed their missions, the points would even be deducted. As for core disciples, they obtained the most points. Each month they got 10,000. Regretfully, that had nothing to do with Long Chen now, as he could only get the pay of an inner sect disciple. 9,900 points had flown away with the hack of his saber. Just as Long Chen was thinking about how to make money to support his family, the elder on the stage had finished discussing the overlord magical beasts that transcendent beast tamers had once managed to subdue. He began to tell an extremely badass story, and also began discussing a badass existence. In the North Underworld, there was a fish known as the Kuan. When the Kuan grew, the elder began describing a terrifying existence, one that only existed in legends. The disciples were all listening with interest when the elder suddenly shouted, "You, what are you thinking about?" The disciples were startled and followed the elder's gaze to see Long Chen staring at the window with a lifeless expression. It was unknown what he was thinking, but it seemed he wasn't listening at all. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen. A maiden beside Long Chen blushed slightly and pushed Long Chen lightly. Is class over?" Long Chen was delighted. But he quickly realized that the teacher was glaring blades at him, and he quickly shut his mouth. "You stand up. Repeat what I just said," ordered the teacher. Long Chen helplessly stood up, grumbling inside. Thickening his face, he said, "In the North Underworld, there was a fish known as the Kuan. When the Kuan grew, Long Chen hadn't even been listening, so he had no idea what he had said after this. Seeing everyone looking at him, he clenched his teeth and said, "When the Kuan grew, it didn't matter, because if it grew too big for the pot, it can still be grilled on a spit. A handful of pepper, a handful of sesame, cook it until the skin bursts, you get a bite, I get a bite, we can raise our cups and eat until the sun rises." Once Long Chen was finished, the classroom was deathly silent. Green veins were popping on the teacher's head. Pointing at Long Chen, even his finger quivered. "Get out." Long Chen still wanted to quibble. "Scram." Now his voice had become a roar, and Long Chen could only helplessly leave, disappearing from people's sights. Damn, so escaping the sea of bitterness is actually so simple. If I had known this earlier, why would I have to suffer? Once Long Chen had walked far away enough and knew the teacher couldn't see him, he stopped and stretched his waist, instantly feeling much more refreshed. Consecutively listening to lectures made him feel like he was going crazy. Being kicked out was a kind of blessing now. Boss. Once Long Chen left the lecture region, he was greeted by a certain person after crossing a bamboo forest. That person immediately knelt on the ground and grabbed Long Chen's leg, sniveling and wailing. "What the fuck, who beat you like this?" raged Long Chen. This miserable person was precisely Guoran. "Boss, you have to get justice for me. The Central Plains is cruel. I want to return to our village," cried Guoran. "Was it that idiot K Sinyan? Bring me over, I'll kill that bastard," raged Long Chen. There was no way he could endure such open bullying. "No, I was beaten by a group of women," cried Guoran. "Women? You offended Hua Xiu?" Long Chen was shocked. That woman truly was not to be trifled with. She was very likely the most terrifying existence amongst the 5 great heavenly geniuses. "No." Guoran shook his head once more. "Then who?" Long Chen suddenly glared at Guoran and said, "Brat, don't tell me you only got beaten because you tried to take some liberties with them." "Boss, I'm not that kind of person," cried Guoran, aggrieved. "Fine, then stop being so embarrassing here. Stand up and tell me what happened. If someone bullied you, your boss will definitely get revenge for you." Long Chen pulled Guoran up. His current state was too ugly. Guoran cried. There were 3 waves of people that beat me. That's overboard. It's not even noon, but you were already beaten 3 times? Long Chen was enraged. Exactly. It's completely overboard. If they weren't women, I'd have definitely attacked them, said Guoran with rage as well. Long Chen really had been angry at the beginning. But now as he listened to Guoran, he felt like something was a bit off. This matter was not as simple as he had thought. What exactly happened? Start from the beginning, said Long Chen. Here's what happened. I didn't have class this morning, so I was just strolling through the public plaza. Then I saw a sharp-mouthed monkey man peddling a young lady with his divination skills. He said that as long as she gave him 1 point, he would give her a faded marriage talisman that would definitely let her find a companion she liked within a month. Don't you think that's just nonsense? What talisman has that effect? Furthermore, how could an outer sect disciple who only just joined the sect know anything about divination? He was clearly just tricking her. I was angry for her, and being so righteous, I couldn't just watch as she was tricked. So I went up to expose him, said Guoran with righteous indignation. That sounds off. You couldn't even beat an outer sect disciple? Asked Long Chen. He wasn't the one to beat me, it was the young lady I saved, cried Guoran. What? How unreasonable. You should have let her be conned. Long Chen shook his head. Exactly. I told her, don't get duped, he's tricking you. Someone as ugly as you won't find others who like you. It would be better for you to keep your points and work on increasing your power. I painstakingly tried to advise her, but she immediately turned hostile and beat me. Boss, tell me, don't you think she's unreasonable? Cried Guoran. And then what? Long Chen didn't have any opinion. Then I left. I wasn't going to beat her, because that's not a manly thing to do. So I stifled my anger and found a place to calmly meditate. But then I saw a woman mournfully walking across the river. I was scared witless. That river absorbs people's spiritual yuan, and you can't use magical arts in it, nor can you swim. She was clearly committing suicide. Suicide? Yes. I shouted at her from a distance, but she ignored me. In my panic, I quickly took off my pants and peed in the river. Once she saw that, she immediately ran to the shore, said Guoran. Brother, these smarts of yours really are shocking. That woman might not be afraid to die, but she would definitely be afraid of drowning from piss. Amazing, you saved a life by peeing. Praised Long Chen. This life-saving measure truly was something only a few others would be able to come up with. What about it was amazing? As soon as she came up to the shore, she began to beat me, saying her precious hairpin fell in the river and she was looking for it, said Guoran with an aggrieved expression. Guoran sighed. Not only was I beaten twice, those 2 were too evil. They used their heavenly Tao energy, so I was unable to heal in a short time. With my miserable state, I had no way to face others. So later, while I was squatting by the path, a group of red-robed big sisters passed. They were so beautiful my heart almost burst. Seeing that I was injured, they asked me what happened, and when I explained, they praised me for my good intentions. Furthermore, they recognized me, saying that I was very famous in the inner sect, and a heroic figure at that. At that time, I was delighted and hastily got up to set things straight. I said that the hero is my boss, and I'm like a python to a dragon. And then they immediately turned hostile and crazily attacked me. I would have been killed if I didn't run fast enough. Boss, don't you think those people have some mental illnesses? When I asked why they suddenly began to beat me, they didn't even say anything and just beat me harder. Long Chen carefully examined Guoran and sighed. Guoran, I really admire you. A group of beautiful women who wear red robes? My guess is that they're from an ancient race. They are people with the bloodline of the heavenly scale blood python. The ancient races are proudest of their bloodline, and with their ancestor being a python and you insulting the python. Guoran, well done, truly well done. I didn't know. Only now did Guoran understand why those women had immediately turned hostile. That's why I've long since told you to stop being such a show-off and study more. But you refuse to listen, So not even a god can save you, said Long Chen helplessly. Anyway, bring me over to Qian Duo. I want to handle a few things. The number of new disciples in the Shintian Dao sect numbered in the millions. However, the majority were not combat disciples. The inner sect trial Long Chen and the others had gone through was to become the main combat disciples. Their group was viewed as the most important group by the Shintian Dao sect. Most of the Shintian Dao sect's disciples could be split into combat disciples, support disciples, and inheritance disciples. There was no need to explain much about the combat disciples. They were the disciples that would form the core of the sect's battle strength. They were the elites of the sect. As for the support disciples, they were the disciples that would help the combat disciples in battle. There were a great deal of these disciples, and they included healers, formation masters, illusion masters, etc. When they worked together with the combat disciples, they would be like tigers with wings. They were also viewed importantly by the sect. However, since there were so many of them, they needed constant adjustment and training so they could cooperate properly with the combat disciples. If their teamwork was off, it would result in casualties rather than increasing their power. Other than these two categories of disciples, there were also inheritance disciples. These disciples included alchemists, talisman scribes, forging masters, essentially disciples with special and ancient inheritances. These disciples were important pillars for the Shintian Dao sect's economy. The amount the Shintian Dao sect invested in them was definitely no less than what they put into the combat disciples. Teaching them their arts exhausted endless resources. Their failure rate at the beginning was frighteningly high. But once they gradually reached a certain level of mastery, they would bring in a shocking amount of profit to the Shintian Dao sect. There were many of these disciples, and they were also cared for deeply by the sect. However, support disciples and inheritance disciples were not allowed to form their own factions. They simply learned from their teachers and cultivated. Only the combat disciples had the qualifications to form their own factions and recruit members. In the future, the Shintian Dao sect would distribute rewards based on the individual factions' accomplishments and displays. Long Chen's faction was simply called the Dragonblood Legion. They had their personal territory, which was a 300-mile mountain. This land belonged to the Dragonblood Legion, and others could not enter, not even the law enforcement hall. To inner sect disciples, this was a token of their grand status. The 6 great factions all had their own territories, and there was no better or worse one. They were essentially the same. Inner sect disciples also had access to cultivation regions. These cultivation resources needed to be activated in order to be used, and the requirement for activating them was the Shintian Dao sect's hardest currency to obtain points. Using a cultivation region for a few hours exhausted a frightening number of points. If all the disciples of the Dragonblood Legion pooled their points, they would only be able to train for a day in a high-grade training room. That was why those cultivation regions couldn't be randomly entered. Your time inside would normally be measured by the hour, and you couldn't waste a single second of that time. Boss, are you not going to class? I thought you'd still be there for a few hours, said Guoran on the way. Do you think I'm as ignorant as you? The teacher saw how erudite I was and let me leave, said Long Chen without turning red or unnatural in the slightest. Guoran immediately felt a burst of admiration. That worshipful expression on his face projected his pride at having such a badass boss. It seemed he had no idea that the teacher had told Long Chen to scram, not to leave. They quickly arrived at the foot of the mountain. The spiritual qi here was dense, and the trees were so huge they soared into the sky. There was a small stone path that led to the peak. According to the rules, the people who won this territory had the right to name it. Tang Wana had decided to call this place Crouching Dragon Mountain. This name had been approved by all the Dragonblood warriors. They couldn't think of a better, more appropriate name. At the top of Crouching Dragon Mountain was a grand and beautiful pavilion. This was Long Chen's residence. From there, it was possible to overlook all of Crouching Dragon Mountain. When Long Chen arrived, he saw that the majority of the disciples were out taking classes. Only a portion remained. The ones present had mostly already finished all their classes. During these days, they had been thinking about what kinds of cultivation goals they should set for themselves, and what direction they should take their cultivation. Guoran had only gone out to mess around because he had finished his classes. Now he was returning with a swollen and bruised face. Long Chen had missed the wave of courses for only inner sect disciples, and thus could only listen with the outer sect disciples. Being kicked out was perfect, as he had important matters to handle. Boss, my investigation during these days revealed that everyone's points are very limited. Getting more points is difficult, especially since everyone is treating the points they have as treasures. They're busy investigating how to use their points in the best manner possible. For us to get more points will be very difficult, said Qian Duoduo upon seeing Long Chen. During the past few days, Qian Duoduo had constantly been investigating the use of points and everyone's thoughts about them. To get more was far too difficult. That's to be expected. People are probably assessing and weighing the value of their points, so no one is willing to use them yet in case they lose out. But in truth, this is the greatest opportunity for us. We're not going to buy points, we're going to sell points, said Long Chen. Sell? Qian Duoduo couldn't believe his ears. Others were doing all they could to get more points. Some people even had the urge to snatch them away forcibly. But Long Chen wanted to sell them off? So, have you investigated how people sell points? Asked Long Chen. Qian Duoduo thought about it for a moment before saying, I have heard someone say that he was willing to offer 10,000 middle-grade spirit stones for 1 point. But that's just what he said. There's no one actually selling them at that price. It's not like people are stupid. The spiritual qi in the Shantian Dao sect is so dense that middle-grade spirit stones are basically useless. No one would buy them. That person was sneered at when he shouted that price, and someone said he was willing to pay twice the price for his points. And that person declined. That's a good thing. In a bit, release word that we are releasing a limited number of points. As for the price, just make it 15,000 middle-grade spirit stones for 1 point. Furthermore, the points are only to be sold to outer sect disciples, and each disciple can only buy one. They are not permitted to buy it again, said Long Chen. I don't get it, said Qian Duoduo. Just do it. Release 20,000 points for now. Let's see the results, said Long Chen. Qian Duoduo was lost, but he still did as Long Chen instructed. He went out in search of Wang Mang and the others. Wang Mang was an outer sect disciple from the senior generation. He had gone to the eastern wasteland to greet the new disciples, but as a result, the Dragonblood Legion had made him submit completely. Wang Mang was an old acquaintance, so it was best to go through him. Using his mouth to spread the news would have a better effect. Everyone had only just obtained their points and they weren't clear on the exact value of them. Long Chen wanted to take advantage of that to rake in a killing. In truth, Long Chen already had a certain idea about the value of a point. He had seen a catalog of what the points could be exchanged for in the sect. 1 point could be exchanged for 1 9-ring Heavenly Star Sea Merging Pill. The Heavenly Star Sea Merging Pill's main ingredient was the 9-yang Heavenly Star Grass. Its effect was even greater than the Sea Merging Pill Long Chen had used before with the 7-stamen Sea Heart Fruit. However, the 9-yang Heavenly Star Grass was extremely expensive. Depending on its age, it sold for between 800 to 1,500 middle-grade spirit stones. Long Chen didn't have that medicinal ingredient, but he could buy one. Then he would have an unlimited supply of it with the primal chaos bead. 1 9-yang Heavenly Star Grass plus over 100 supplementary ingredients would transform to become 3,000 middle-grade spirit stones through a successful refinement. However, the odds of a successful refinement were only 30%. And so the manufacturing cost was basically just under 10,000 middle-grade spirit stones. It was no wonder that the person saying he would buy a point for 10,000 middle-grade spirit stones was cursed. He must have thought others were idiots. The investment to refine the pill 3 times was essentially 10,000 middle-grade spirit stones. And ordinary alchemists wouldn't necessarily be able to refine a 9-ring pill no matter how hard they tried. Even if the top masters of the Shantian Dao sect came out, a 9-ring pill would still be a very high-level existence to them. That was why Long Chen estimated 1 point to be worth around 15 to 18,000 middle-grade spirit stones. As for why he first released a limited 20,000 points into the market, it was bait. The first thing to do was to get the atmosphere ready. Then once the fish came, he would make the real killing. It had already been quite some time since he had arrived at the Xiantian Dao sect. According to their agreement, Zheng Wenlong should be sending him a message in the next few days after he had stabilized himself in the Central Plains. At that time, he would have plenty of middle-grade spirit stones to buy things from him. He would make a great deal of profit by doing things like this. These disciples' middle-grade spirit stones had essentially become trash now that they had come to the Xiantian Dao sect. The spirit stones were useless to the disciples, and rather than letting the Xiantian Dao sect benefit from people throwing them away, they could be used to help Long Chen. Long Chen felt a great deal of pressure. His family had grown much, much larger. These new disciples had no selfish motives, as was proven when they had handed all their points to Tang Wana. Perhaps only by going through blood and fire could people see the true meaning of cultivation instead of being blinded by greed. Originally, Long Chen hadn't been thinking of accepting new people. He had just wanted to lead the original members of the Dragon Blood Legion to dominate the world, but now his plans were forced to change. That battle had completely changed his original thinking. These disciples had ordinary talent, just like the original Dragon Blood warriors. But Long Chen was sure that as long as he had money, he could transform them into a powerful army. And this army would be completely loyal and devoted to him. At the same time, Long Chen felt his own power was lacking. His fight against Kai Xinyan had shown him that he still wasn't strong enough. He had to work hard on upgrading himself as well as upgrading all the Dragon Blood warriors. He couldn't bother with that voice or how it called him the Son of Fate. If things were to continue as they were, he would be crushed like a dog, so first things first. I almost forgot about Kai Xinyan's Earth Flame Beast. Let's see if I can subdue it and have it refine pills for me. Long Chen's eyes suddenly brightened. He could refine the Heavenly Star Sea Merging pill, but he didn't have the time. If he could subdue another Earth Flame and have it refine pills along with Huolong, wouldn't that be amazing? Thinking of that, Long Chen felt a burst of anticipation and joy. He hastily looked inside the primal chaos space, but when he saw the situation inside, he couldn't help but become dumbfounded. Where is the Earth Flame? Long Chen only saw Lei Long and Huolong in the primal chaos space. The flame leopard was nowhere to be seen. Huolong let out a roar, and a foot-long flame dragon flew out and intimately coiled around Long Chen's arm. It rubbed against him like a child sucking up. You ate it? Looking at Huolong's guilty actions, Long Chen became speechless. He suddenly felt like he had done something foolish. If you had a cat watch over a fish, the results would be obvious to anyone. Fine, if you ate it, you ate it. I won't blame you. Seeing the flame dragon continuously rubbing against his arm like it was afraid he would curse it, Long Chen couldn't help but smile bitterly. Hearing that, Huolong let out an excited roar. Its body suddenly lit up, and a powerful aura rose from it. What the fuck, you were conning me? Shouted Long Chen. Huolong had really only swallowed the Earth Flame Beast into its stomach. It hadn't killed it. But once Long Chen said that he didn't blame it, it immediately devoured the Earth Flame. Those fierce fluctuations coming from it were the result of it merging with the flame leopard. Long Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This little fellow was too evil. If he had instead become furious upon hearing that it had devoured it, it would have handed over the flame leopard. But since he didn't blame it, it immediately devoured the flame leopard. He was speechless. Fine, go ahead. But I don't have time for you to descend into slumber. You'll have to spend a longer amount of time digesting it this time. I need you to do work for me, said Long Chen. Since the flame leopard had already been devoured, the work he had been planning for it would have to be taken up by Huolong. Eating things always came with a price. However, there was still some time, so Long Chen had Huolong first devour a bit of its new energy and get accustomed to its power. After all, Huolong had now devoured 2 new Earth Flames. The previous Earth Flame hadn't been fully digested yet, and now Huolong had devoured an even stronger earth flame. To completely digest all that energy would take a long time. And if it didn't descend into slumber, it wouldn't be able to focus 100% on refining that energy, which would prolong the digestion time even more. Right now, it was too late to complain, so there was no point in being petty. But Long Chun was comforted to see that the little fellow's intelligence was so high. It actually knew how to play such a trick on him. That was a good thing. The higher its intelligence, the more it could help him. Furthermore, Huolong would only get stronger after refining the two earth flames' essences. After settling this matter, Long Chun checked the time and his expression drastically changed. He had almost messed up. He said a hurried goodbye to Guoran and rushed off the mountain into a large palace at the front courtyard of the Xiantian Dao sect. The main hall was already completely full of sitting disciples. However, the teacher hadn't arrived yet, which allowed Long Chun to relax. This was his afternoon class and an important one to Long Chun, as it was one discussing the principles of the Pill Dao. With his pill god memories, these principles were useless, nothing more than child's play to him. But his real goal was the Alchemy Pavilion. He needed the Alchemy Pavilion to provide him with resources. With that, he would be able to quickly strengthen the Dragon Blood Legion. Due to Huolong's matter, Long Chun was almost late. This was the final class on the Pill Dao, and if he missed it, he wouldn't have a chance to become a disciple of the Alchemy Pavilion. Within the Xiantian Dao sect, inner sect disciples had great authority and could freely join professions they enjoyed or were skilled in to do some side work. Senior apprentice brother Long Chun, over here. There's space here. As soon as Long Chun arrived, a few women beckoned to him. Long Chun's battle with Kei Xinyan had deeply shaken everyone. Amongst the new disciples, there was no one who didn't recognize him. The fact that Long Chun had fought so bravely to get revenge for his fellow disciples had touched many people's hearts. Long Chun's wild and domineering aura felt especially fresh and dangerous to women in the springtime of their youth. Long Chun awkwardly smiled and said, "Thank you, but I'm fine here. My brothers are already here." Amongst these disciples, there were 3 disciples of the Dragon Blood Legion. They were new members, and seeing Long Chun arrive, they quickly made space for him. Those women were a bit disappointed, but his polite refusal didn't draw any anger. Instead, they felt even more admiration. A true hero should be gentle and refined normally, and should only become a devil god once they encountered powerful enemies. His conduct was the complete opposite of certain people. Those people normally brandish their claws at others to appear domineering, but when the true life and death battle came, they would piss themselves. Quiet! Just as a disturbance was caused by Long Chun's arrival, a person walked into the room and shouted. This was an elder wearing embroidered robes. His sleeves and collar had designs made of golden threads, which were round like buttons, but they were actually the designs of medicinal ingredients. The elder's forehead was a bit narrow, while his mouth was a bit big. However, his lips were very thin. Seeing him, Long Chun grumbled inside. Although he liked to spout nonsense that he could read faces, the truth was that he was very sensitive to a person's nature through the 9-star Hegemon body art. He could tell a person's general character with practically just a glance. This elder's face embodied the words sharp, cold, harsh, and sour. This was the hardest kind of person to form relations with. Long Chun would rather have dealings with a magical beast than such a person. How many times have you been told that as soon as you enter the main hall, you are attending class and are not here to make a ruckus? Reprimanded the elder. His gaze swept over everyone, but when he saw Long Chun, he paused slightly. Long Chun's heart dropped. He sensed extremely obvious hostility. What was going on? He had no enmity with him. Reporting to teacher, it was Long Chun's late arrival that caused the disturbance. It has nothing to do with us. A disciple with a pockmarked face stood and reported. The disciples beside Long Chun were all infuriated. This tattletale was intentionally framing Long Chun. This teacher was famed for his strictness, and this person was intentionally trying to humiliate Long Chun. The pockmarked disciple glanced at Long Chun deliberately before sitting back down. He came from the Flame Gate. In other words, he was one of Kei Xinyan's subordinates. The Dragonblood Legion and the Flame Gate were like water and fire now, so he naturally wouldn't mind taking this opportunity to throw a stone at Long Chen. "Is that true, Long Chen?" demanded the teacher. Reporting to teacher, senior apprentice brother Long Chen wasn't late. What happened was a woman stood up to Long Chen's defense. Long Chen truly hadn't been late. He had managed to get in at the last second. "Shut up. Who let you randomly open your mouth in the classroom? If it happens again, I'll kick you out. My alchemy pavilion doesn't need disciples that don't understand the rules," shouted the teacher. The female disciple's eyes reddened. She sat down, not daring to make another sound. "I didn't arrive late. The truth is Long Chen shook his head. "Shameful. Did your family elders never teach you to stand when speaking to teachers?" shouted the elder. Long Chen was enraged. His greatest taboo was when people mentioned his family elders, as his only family elders were his father and mother. He forcibly suppressed his rage and slowly stood. "I didn't arrive late. I got here just in time. In my alchemy classes, I stress that only arriving a quarter hour earlier counts as being on time. You arrived late, but you're still quibbling. Your family's upbringing really was lacking. For you to sneak your way into the Shintian Dao sect is regretful for the sect," sneered the teacher. "I was injured, so I wasn't able to attend the previous classes." And so Long Chen took a deep breath and once more suppressed his fury. The alchemy pavilion was important to him. He had to get in, or it would greatly affect the cultivation speed of the Dragonblood Legion. "Don't try and find excuses. I only care about the results. And right now, what I see is a coward trying to find excuses and trying to shirk his responsibility. It's no wonder you were stripped of your core disciple spot just a few hours after obtaining it." The fact that a person with no sense of discipline or responsibility could become an inner sect disciple is a humiliation to the Shintian Dao sect. If you have any sense of shame, you'll leave now. "I will not permit such an undisciplined person to attend my class," said the teacher as he walked right in front of Long Chen. Long Chen unconsciously clenched his fists so hard that they creaked. He was sure this teacher was intentionally making things hard on him. He saw a pleased expression in the teacher's eyes. This was clearly a trap. He was intentionally insulting him and kicking him out. "Boss, let's go. We're not attending this garbage class." The Dragonblood Legion's new warriors stood up. Even they could see that this teacher was intentionally insulting Long Chen. It was completely overboard. For anyone to humiliate Long Chen, who was like a god to them, was completely unacceptable. Not even the Shintian Dao sect's famed alchemy pavilion's teacher was an exception. Calling his class garbage was already expressing their rage. Although the alchemy pavilion was a sacred place, compared to the position Long Chen had in their hearts, there was no comparison. "Undisciplined brats, all of you can scram," roared the teacher. "Fuck the hell off." Long Chen finally couldn't bear it any longer, and in front of everyone's stunned gazes, his fist landed right in the middle of that teacher's cold face. Bang! Long Chen's fist landed squarely on the teacher's face. The teacher had never dreamed that Long Chen would dare to strike him. As a result, his entire face caved in front this punch. He let out a miserable scream and flew back. He crashed against the wall and then rebounded, and before he could do anything, Long Chen had grabbed him. He raised his hand. Pow, 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 pow. In the blink of an eye, 36 slaps struck his face. The teacher's face immediately swelled like a pig. "Brute, you dare dash?" Only now did the teacher react. Flames erupted out of his body. As a result, Long Chen sent a punch to his abdomen. The teacher let out a pained groan and curled up like a shrimp. This punch had been extremely vicious. It had almost crippled his dantian. But even though Long Chen hadn't crippled him, he had heavily injured his dantian, making him incapable of circulating spiritual yuan for a short time. Looking at the teacher curled up on the ground, all the disciples were shocked. The teachers were all king-level experts. For Long Chen to dare to strike one, did he not want his life? Long Chen icily stared at the pained teacher, furious killing intent in his eyes. This bastard was intentionally targeting him, making sure he couldn't join the alchemy pavilion. At the beginning, Long Chen had been forced to endure, but after giving him an inch, he wanted a mile. He refused to allow Long Chen to join the alchemy pavilion. Although he didn't know for sure what his reasoning was, he knew that with this teacher present, there was no way for him to join the alchemy pavilion. Using his position, it will be all too easy to kick him out, so rather than enduring, it was better to vent his anger. At this moment, a figure tried to rush out. That person was the one who had tattled on him. "You want to go report this? Get back here." Long Chen disappeared. When he reappeared, he was in front of that disciple. That disciple was appalled. Seeing Long Chen blocking him, his soul almost fled out of terror. He hastily turned around, but he was grabbed by Long Chen. He was thrown into a wall and smushed like a frog before collapsing on the ground. His body was completely deformed, with all his bones shattered. "Loose-tongued ghost, let me help you out." Long Chen raised him and crushed his jaw with one blow, and then grabbing his tongue, he pulled. "Ah!" The one screaming with a few female disciples, because that disciple couldn't make a sound. His entire tongue was ripped out by Long Chen, and it was an incredibly bloody sight. At this time, the teacher slowly crawled up. Long Chen suddenly threw the disciple in his hand at him. Both of them tumbled back and struck the wall. The disciple fainted. "Long Chen, you dash." The teacher had only just opened his mouth when he was sent flying by a kick. He smashed into another wall, appearing extremely miserable. "Damn old ghost." "As expected, you knew my name but were just acting like you didn't. Trash like you can become a teacher? Speak, what were you paid to make things hard on me?" Just talking about it made Long Chen enraged, and he once more slapped the teacher in the face. The sound of the slapping echoed throughout the palace. Everyone was pale with fright. This was too crazy. Was Long Chen really so powerful that he was a match for kings? The truth was that the only reason Long Chen could beat this elder like beating a child was because he understood alchemists far too well. Alchemists possessed weak bodies, and without activating their pill flame to protect their bodies, their combat power was terrible. As for this teacher, he was clearly used to living like a prince and had no battle experience. If he really wanted to, he could instantly kill him. This was the difference between inheritance and fighting experts. He possessed an expert's cultivation base and foundation, but his combat power was essentially zero. Such people never entered the battlefield. Courting death. "Brute, you dash!" People's eyes almost popped out as Long Chen broke the teacher's arms and legs, causing him to spasm. When it came to which parts of the human body could bring about the most pain, no one had more knowledge than Long Chen. He icily said, "Speak, who told you to make things hard on me?" "You dash." The teacher's body quivered with hatred and rancor. "Your answer was beside the point." Long Chen stamped his foot down several times, eliciting pained screams. "Who told you to do this? It's fine if you don't say. I have many ways to make a person tell the truth, and I can try them one by one. If 30 of them fail, I'll admit you're a real man, and I'll cut off my own head as an apology. So should we start?" said Long Chen with a sincere smile. "I'll speak." "It was the law enforcement hall dash," cried the teacher. His face was scrumpled into a deformed state from the pain. He wasn't a fighting expert, so he had never experienced this kind of torment. His will quickly crumbled, and he begged for mercy. How brazen Long Chen! Suddenly, 2 figures appeared in the palace. Coincidentally, these 2 were people Long Chen recognized. They were the 2 law enforcement elders who had appeared when Long Chen had viciously quelled the disciples who had failed and decided to charge up the Xiantian staircase. One of them was the one he had several interactions with, Lu Minghan. He was the one shouting, "I've always been brazen, or how could I have cut off your head?" sneered Long Chen. Long Chen was now fully clear on this matter. The teacher's words had confirmed his initial suspicions that this matter had the law enforcement hall behind it. Startled cries rang out. What kind of monster? Not only did they personally witness him crushing a teacher like he was a dog, now it seemed he had truly cut off the head of a king. Lu Minghan's face was dark with anger. That was the greatest humiliation of his life, and Long Chen had once more ripped off his scab. Brazen Long Chen, you've caused chaos in a peaceful class and beat up a teacher. Your crimes are unforgivable, and if you don't kneel immediately, don't blame my law enforcement hall for being merciless and executing you," shouted Lu Minghan. He and the other king attacked at the same time, their chains whistling towards Long Chen. Two kings attacked at the same time. Their chains completely blocked any paths of retreat for Long Chen, and the great power behind them caused space to rumble. How were they trying to subdue Long Chen? They were clearly trying to kill him. "Idiot, you were helpless to do anything to me in the Eastern Wasteland, and you're still helpless to do anything to me now. Let me show you my peerless skill, the living replacement human shield." Long Chen kicked the half-dead teacher into his waiting hand. Just like that, he raised him towards the chains. Lu Minghan and his fellow king immediately felt their hair stand on end, and they hastily retracted their chains. The chain stopped just half an inch from the teacher's face. But the astral winds following them almost killed him. He coughed up bloody that contained his broken innards. "Long Chen, you're courting death." Lu Minghan roared furiously, his face slightly pale. Fiercely attacking and then fiercely pulling back power was the greatest taboo for cultivators. It was equivalent to attacking oneself. Both of them almost coughed up blood. Long Chen waved his human shield and sneered, "With two huge pieces of shit here, why would I need to find more shit?" Since the situation had already reached this point, then he had to blow up this matter until it was huge. Otherwise, he would end up losing. Long Chen released the teacher. "Otherwise, we'll kill you right now," shouted the other king. "Do you think I'd believe you? You want to kill me anyways, so why would I be so stupid as to put down my protective talisman?" sneered Long Chen. "Don't be obstinate. Release the teacher. That's the only way to lighten your sentence, allowing you to keep your life," shouted Lu Minghan. "Fuck off. Do you think I'm a child? If you want to attack, then attack. Let's see if I'm afraid of you," sneered Long Chen. Just before this, Long Chen had stealthily signaled to the Dragonblood Legion's disciples to leave and announce this matter outside. There had been a few disciples who had begun to run out as the two law enforcement elders had come, as they had been worried about being implicated. The news would definitely rapidly spread. Of course, if someone was intentionally spreading it, it would spread even faster. Lu Minghan's expression was cold. He cast a glance at his fellow king, but that person shook his head. If Lu Minghan did go all out to kill Long Chen, he was confident he could kill him in just a few breaths. The higher-ups wouldn't be able to blame them, as Long Chen had refused to go peacefully. Long Chen was holding a hostage, and so they had no choice but to do everything they could to suppress him. But the other king didn't agree. If Long Chen died, it wouldn't be important. The main problem was that Long Chen would definitely drag down the teacher as well before dying, and then it wouldn't be so easy to quibble. The two of them were deadlocked for a while. Long Chen was holding a human meat shield, icily staring at the two of them. The other disciples all retreated out of the palace, leaving behind just them. "Arrogant brat, you dare to use brute strength to resist your capture? Do you think the Shintian Dao sect is your home?" Suddenly, a new figure appeared in the palace. Seeing that figure, Long Chen's expression changed as he realized he was unable to move. Long Chen hadn't expected the law enforcement hall master to personally come. As soon as he arrived, Long Chen felt all his hair stand on end. It felt like a wild beast had set its gaze on him, and he found that he suddenly couldn't move. In front of the law enforcement hall master, Long Chen felt himself to be an ant looking at a dragon. He felt himself to be incredibly minuscule, as if the law enforcement hall master could kill him with just a thought. Sweat trickled down his back. That wasn't something Long Chen could control. Right now, he felt like he couldn't even form an urge to resist. The law enforcement hall master took a single step forward, and Long Chen felt the space around him tighten. It was like a mountain was crushing him. The law enforcement hall master took 3 more steps forward, and with each step, Long Chen felt the pressure on him increase, as if mountain after mountain was crashing on top of him. When he took his 7th step, Long Chen finally coughed up a mouthful of blood. When he took his 8th step, a crackling sound rang throughout Long Chen's body. His bones were unable to bear it, and faint cracks covered them. Long Chen's kneecaps were under the most pressure. His bones were starting to bend. Long Chen icily glared at the law enforcement hallmaster. He knew that he was intentionally humiliating him, trying to force him to kneel for mercy. But Long Chen went all out to resist. He refused to bend his knees. Endless fury ignited his killing intent. That was his most primal killing intent. This killing intent had been buried because of Meng Qi's words. But now, it was once more starting to grow. The law enforcement hall master coldly took another step forward. But when he saw a sharp light in Long Chen's eyes, he suddenly felt an indescribable sense of unease. However, he didn't hesitate. On this ninth step, Long Chen felt like he was under the weight of 100,000 mountains. He felt like his body was about to explode. Luo Fan, you're getting worse and worse. Is being so heavy-handed against a child suited to your status? Suddenly, a slightly mocking voice rang out, and another elder appeared by Long Chen's side. That was the elder hall master, Lu Tsong. As soon as he appeared in front of Long Chen, the mountain-like pressure vanished. Long Chen almost collapsed on the ground when he felt his body lighten. Lu Tsong placed a hand on Long Chen's body, and gentle energy spread within him. Long Chen felt all his bones instantly heal, and all his injuries were fixed. The elder hall master was a wood cultivator? Long Chen was startled. There was no other way to explain such terrifying healing abilities. You're the one getting worse. If I didn't do this, would you appear? Said the law enforcement hall master Luo Fan lightly. Long Chen was enraged. So he had done this to force Lu Tsong to appear. That was definitely bullying. This was a naked disregard. Long Chen nodded. He would remember this. I've appeared, so let's continue, said Lu Tsong. Long Chen disturbed the classroom and beat up a teacher. That is a grave offense to the Dao sect. Do you have any opinion if I want to bring him away right now? Said the law enforcement hall master with a smile. That smile was the smile of a victor overlooking his defeated opponent. In all their previous contests, the law enforcement hall had been at a disadvantage. Now, Long Chen had committed a grave mistake and was caught. The law enforcement hall had succeeded in winning this round. Lu Tsong shook his head. Why bother? Just to force me to appear, you didn't hesitate to ignore a disciple's dignity? Don't you think that's a bit too far? Don't be such a hypocrite. Those who break the rules don't have the qualifications to maintain their dignity. That's their punishment. Lu Tsong, since you've come, I've reached my goal. I will be bringing Long Chen away. Luo Fan smiled and walked toward Long Chen. Sorry, but I can't hand Long Chen to you, said Lu Tsong. What do you think you're doing? Demanded Luo Fan coldly. I suspect there's something fishy about this matter, said Lu Tsong. Luo Fan's expression sank. Are you saying I framed Long Chen? If you just opened your eyes, you would be able to see what happened. Sometimes eyes aren't able to see the truth. I need to investigate this matter to its roots. If Long Chen did commit an offense, I definitely won't protect him. But if he is faultless, I will definitely not allow anyone to abuse their public position to bully my disciples, said Lu Tsong. You really want to go against me like this? Raged Luo Fan. Isn't that what you wanted? I will report this matter to the Xiantian Tower's supervising department tomorrow. They are the most impartial group in the Xiantian Dao sect, and they have the power to go through people's memories. I trust they'll be able to give us the most just verdict, said Lu Tsong. Pow! Old bastard, what are you winking for? Long Chen suddenly raised the teacher in his hand and slapped him. Long Chen had seen him casting a special look at the Luo Fan. Brute, you really must want to die. Luo Fan's expression sank. If an old bastard like you hasn't died, why would a young fellow like me die? Sneered Long Chen. In any case, he had already decided to hug the leg of the elder hall. Thus, he might as well be straightforward and go right up against the law enforcement hall. Long Chen wasn't worried about cursing the law enforcement hall master. He could at least vent a bit of fury and treat it as redeeming some interest. Luo Fan, let's leave this to the Xiantian Tower's supervising department tomorrow. Long Chen, release him. With me present, no one is capable of injuring you, said Lu Tsong. Long Chen hesitated and looked at the sharp-faced teacher in his hand. Seeing the rancor in his eyes, Long Chen slapped him twice more before tossing him to Luo Fan. Luo Fan caught him. But the teacher's bones had all been shattered by Long Chen, and there was no way for him to stand. Luo Fan didn't possess Lu Tsong's healing abilities, so he handed him to Lu Minghan with orders to heal his wounds. Lu Tsong was leading Long Chen to leave when Luo Fan suddenly blocked their path. Lu Tsong icily asked, "What?" "Today, I must bring Long Chen away," declared Luo Fan. "You can try it." Lu Tsong narrowed his eyes. After being old opponents for so long, he knew what Luo Fan was thinking. "You want to fight? Good, good, then I'll be the referee. Should I open the martial stage for you right now?" Suddenly, another figure appeared in the palace. "Xian Master." Lu Tsong and Luo Fan were both shocked and hastily bowed. They hadn't thought that this matter would disturb the Xian Master. "What happened here?" asked the Xian Master. "This is what happened." Long Chen directly went through what had happened. He didn't exaggerate anything. All he said was the truth. "Luo Fan, I seem to recall that this teacher's name is Luo Qibo. He is related to you?" asked the Xian Master. "We have a distant family relationship, but..." Luo Fan began to sweat. "There's no need to explain. I'll present you with two options. One is to go to the Xiantian Tower Supervising Department to investigate this matter clearly and make a verdict. That will require quite a bit of time. The other option is to punish Long Chen by stripping him of his inner sect disciple position and demoting him to an outer sect disciple," said the Xian Master. "Then wouldn't I have lost out?" Long Chen was against the second option. "Little fellow, you have no qualifications to complain. Even if Luo Qibo was targeting you, you could have registered a complaint and gone through the regular channels. If you had received unjust treatment, the Dao sect would definitely write it for you. However, you didn't go through the regular channels, and instead, you directly disturbed a class and beat a teacher. You chose the most brutish way of handling this. Even if you were in the right after what you did, you're no longer in the right. So when you do things, you should carefully consider your options and not act rashly." "Well, that's all I have to say. You can choose one of these options," said the Xian Master. "Disciple will listen to the Xian Master's orders. We can choose the second option and not trouble the supervising department," said Luo Fan. He had no choice but to choose the second option because Luo Qibo was truly related to him. He hadn't expected this matter to disturb the Xian Master. Now it wasn't so easy to handle. Although he hadn't ordered Luo Qibo to do anything, he had told all his relatives to not give Long Chen an easy time. His guess was that Luo Qibo had been trying to help him, but it had resulted in this current situation. "Long Chen, what do you say?" The Xian Master looked toward Long Chen. For some unknown reason, he had an urge to laugh upon looking at him. For a disciple to beat up a teacher during class was something that had never happened in the Xiantian Dao sect's history. Long Chen was truly a marvel. It was no wonder the patriarch had given him a simple evaluation, unreliable. "I still feel like I'm losing out. After all, if you look at the consequences, you should first look at the causes. Among the two, the factors that cause the consequences should definitely bear the most blame, at the very least 80%. If you want to punish me to maintain the dignity of the Xiantian Dao sect, then I can accept a compromise. However, you have to guarantee that I keep the same privileges and can freely enter the inner sect," said Long Chen. Long Chen knew that there was no way to avoid punishment for beating up a teacher. But outer sect disciples were not allowed to enter the inner sect, and that would mean he would be isolated from the Dragon Blood Legion. That was unacceptable. "Are you haggling?" The Xian Master's expression sank. "Then how about we go to the supervising department and go through their procedure? I, Long Chen, always act openly and candidly. I'm not afraid of an investigation," said Long Chen. The Xian Master was speechless. Long Chen was truly crafty, and he refused to lose out because of this. "Luo Fan, what do you say?" The Xian Master directed the question to the Law Enforcement Hall Master. Luo Fan hastily said, "I'll follow whatever your orders are. However, Disciple feels that Long Chen's conditions are acceptable. After all, he is the leader of his faction, and separating them is unreasonable. Seeing that Luo Fan would actually thicken his face and plead leniency for Long Chen, the Xian master sighed inside. Long Chen had slyly taken advantage of Luo Fan's weakness, forcing him to submit. But how was such a sly and crafty fellow capable of doing such a foolish thing? It was incomprehensible. Since Luo Fan wasn't against it, the Xian master disappeared from their sight. As soon as he left, Luo Fan's expression turned icy. "Let me say it again, don't fall into my hands," he said before leaving. The only ones left in the palace were Long Chen and the elder hall master, Lutsong. Lutsong just looked at Long Chen without saying anything, making Long Chen feel awkward. He didn't know what to say. "This wasn't my fault." In the end, Long Chen shrugged and broke this awkward atmosphere. "I know." Lutsong nodded. Of course he knew. As his opponent of many years, he was profoundly aware of the law enforcement hall master's methods. "I'm curious, if you had just used your brain slightly, you would have been able to resolve this problem in a more effective and self-protecting manner. So why did you choose this method?" asked Lutsong curiously. "The main thing is that it would be too troublesome." "I don't have the time," said Long Chen helplessly. How did he have the time necessary to play this stupid game with this pack of idiots? Being direct was much more effective. "Many thanks for helping, Elder Hall Master." Long Chen bowed toward him. In any case, Lutsong had come out to help him. "There's no need to thank me. Those under the jurisdiction of my elder hall are my disciples. As long as you stand within reason, I will always stand by your side," said Lutsong. Long Chen knew that this was a warning. This time, the law enforcement hall had shed all pretenses of cordiality, making Long Chen a crucial target. As long as Long Chen didn't go too far, the elder hall would be able to protect him. However, if he did go too far, he would leave an opening for the law enforcement hall, and then it would be troublesome. This was a game of rules. As long as he acted within the rules, he would be safe. But if he went beyond, it would be dangerous. Lutsong felt like Long Chen's guts were too big. "Disciple understands. Next time, I will definitely take note," said Long Chen, knowing that Lutsong was saying this for his own good. His meaning was obvious. He was a chess piece being used in the competition between the Elder Hall and the Law Enforcement Hall. Lutsong's words just now were a kind of promise, allowing Long Chen to be at ease. Other than that, don't look down on the Xian master. "His intelligence is not something you can imagine," said Lutsong. Long Chen was startled. In truth, although he felt respect for the Xian master's cultivation base, he did scoff a bit at his attitude toward managing the Xiantian Dao sect. But now that Lutsong was intentionally bringing this up, it seemed he had clearly seen through his thoughts. "Disciple understands." Long Chen nodded. Now he felt that he was still too inexperienced. "You can keep your inner sect disciple plate so you can enter the inner sect. But starting today, you'll have to wear outer sect disciples' robes." Lutsong left, his final words being to take care of how far Long Chen went. When Long Chen left the palace, he saw a sea of people outside. Countless disciples had surrounded the palace. "Boss, you're finally out." All the Dragon Blood warriors rushed over. Seeing that he was safe and sound, they relaxed. The other disciples, especially the ones who had personally seen Long Chen beat up a teacher, found this inconceivable. After beating a teacher, this was all that happened? "Sorry, but senior apprentice brother Long Chen, you are now an outer sect disciple and must complete the missions given by the outer sect." At this time, a group of disciples walked over, a new set of robes in their hands. "What? That's unacceptable. They can't demote our boss to an outer sect disciple," raged the Dragon Blood warriors. Being demoted to the outer sect is already kind of the Dao sect. Such trash should be directly expelled. PFFT. A disciple had been in the midst of sneering when a lightning arrow pierced his chest, forming a large hole. He was almost directly killed, causing everyone to jump. "Keep farting." Long Chen icily stared at that person. "You're the most useless trash. Other than spouting crap, you don't have the slightest ability. If you keep going, I'll make it so you can't spout anything for the rest of your life." Everyone was startled. Long Chen was too violent, attacking without saying a word. But then thinking about how he even dared to beat a teacher, it seemed there really was nothing he didn't dare to do. All of you should go back and do what you need to do. Just do what you normally do. What I'm doing is just a formality, and I'll be back quickly. Long Chen changed into outer sect robes and handed his old robes to a dragon blood warrior. He had him bring a message back to everyone, telling them not to worry. Seeing Long Chen's figure disappearing from their sight, all the inner sect disciples were deeply shaken. This person was too coarse and wild. Long Chen followed the group of outer sect disciples to a small transportation formation. The Xiantian Dao sect was just that large. Outer sect disciples worked on the edges of the sect, so they needed to use transportation formations to get around. Otherwise, it would waste far too much time. Arriving at the outer regions, Long Chen clearly sensed the spiritual qi grow sparser. Furthermore, he saw many more people, male and female, young and old. It was like he had arrived at an ordinary city. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, you might be unaware of this, but the outer sect is completely different from the inner sect. We are not the true backbone of the sect. In fact, we're like an army of hired workers. Outer sect disciples have to handle missions to get their cultivation resources, and the outer sect is practically not a sect, but a land of cities. The workers make up most of the numbers, and there are also descendants of generations of outer sect disciples and workers. So the outer sect is a very chaotic place, explained one of the disciples. You can marry and have children here? Long Chen was startled. Yes, the absolute majority of people here are from the 4 outer regions. Their talent is limited and they can't enter the inner sect. In fact, some are unable to even qualify as outer sect disciples. But they're also unwilling to leave, so they stay behind as workers. They pass their days by doing odd jobs or perhaps adventuring. As for the Dao sect, it gives them a few resources as a reward. In any case, they won't starve to death, but they won't eat enough to get full. I'm not afraid of senior apprentice brother Long Chen laughing at me, so I'll tell you that our ancestors were just workers, said one of them with a bitter smile. Long Chen shook his head. Those who work for their food are all worthy of respect. On the other hand, those people who reap without sowing, relying entirely on their reincarnation arts to live, but still look down on others, are the idiots that should be laughed at. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen is as amiable and easygoing as the stories say. You also know of me? Long Chen was surprised. In the entire Xiantian Dao sect, there are few people that don't know of you. You come from the wilds, you led a group of the least talented disciples through a life and death battle in the inner sect trial, you sacrificed your core disciple spot to save them, and you even risked your life to fight against a peak heavenly genius. In the outer sect, you are like a god. We, who are the descendants of people from the 4 outer regions, all view you as a model. You are our pride, said one of them emotionally. Long Chen hadn't expected to get such a welcome in the outer sect. These outer sect disciples worshipped him. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, the powers in the outer sect are complicated, so you have to be careful. What are you talking about? There are too many people in the outer sect, and the outer sect disciples only take up 1 in 10,000 of them. There's another portion that are workers, and another portion that are just commoners. Workers only get 100 years of low rations. After 100 years, they become commoners and need to think of other ways to survive. The Xiantian Dao sect created many opportunities for the commoners to make a living, for example, planting medicinal ingredients, raising magical beasts, etc. The sect will allow them to survive. But as you know, wherever there is profit, there will be. Well, you understand, said a disciple. Long Chen understood. He felt like the outer sect was practically not even a place of cultivation. Outer sect disciples were the people with the highest income here, and from this disciple's tone, it seemed there were many complicated twists and turns for the people here. As they continued forward, Long Chen continued to ask many things about the outer sect. They explained everything they knew without holding anything back. They quickly arrived at a city hundreds of miles wide. The streets were extremely lively, and Long Chen felt like he had returned to the Phoenix Cry capital. He felt an extremely familiar feeling. The law enforcer squad's coming. Long Chen and the outer sect disciples had only just walked onto a large street when they saw the street vendors hastily putting their things in their spatial rings and running in fright. From the front, a group of large people with short cudgels charging over. They were muscular, but they were also so fat that they looked like they might burst. Whenever they saw anyone, they would beat them. Those people didn't dare to fight back and only miserably fled. Some who fled too slow were beaten black and blue, blood covering their heads. Long Chen looked and sensed that those people's cultivation bases weren't high. Some of these people had cultivation bases below the bone-forging realm. As for the people beating them, they were all at the Xiantian realm. Although they weren't celestials, beating these peddlers was easy for them. They were extremely tyrannical. Once the peddlers were beaten to the ground by those people, the latter would reach for the spatial rings in their hands. Some people who refused to let go were once more beaten until they fell unconscious. What is this, robbery? Long Chen was dumbfounded. No, this is the law enforcer squad's way of enforcing the law. Those disciples had seen this so many times that it was just a common occurrence. Why are they beating them? And to beat them so badly, is there some great enmity between them? Long Chen didn't understand. These people are all pitiful. They are unable to pay the expensive rent inside the city, and so they can only stealthily set up stalls on the streets in other places to make some money. But these law enforcers are tasked with handling them. To put it bluntly, without paying the protection fee, you have to be prepared to be beaten to death. The law enforcers don't usually come out. They'll only come when the merchants in the city report to them. The peddlers here infringe on the merchants' profit, and the merchants paid the fee. So the peddlers end up being violently kicked out, answered one of the disciples helplessly. How is this kicking them out? They're just taking their money. Are they going to hand it over to higher authorities? Asked Long Chen. Probably not. These peddlers are all poor, so what they have isn't worth much money. They'll probably keep it for themselves, said that disciple. Long Chen nodded. He had long since activated a photographic jade to record the scene of these heroic law enforcers. He had never seen such a heroic squad. Brat, are you looking to die? Seeing Long Chen recording them, one of the law enforcers suddenly roared and charged at Long Chen. One of the law enforcers charged over, stopping when he was right in front of Long Chen. Waving his cudgel at Long Chen's nose, he roared, "Are you looking to die?" This person is Dash. One of the disciples hastily tried to explain. Shut up. You outer sect disciples, just properly eat your dog food. Meddlers are asking for it. Cursed the law enforcer, not caring at all about their outer sect disciple robes. He directly moved to snatch Long Chen's photographic jade. As a result, Long Chen gave him a slap in the face that sent him flying into a distant wall. The immense power caused him to flatten like a painting. Blood flew everywhere. Bastard, how dare you attack the law enforcement hall's disciples? You dash. Long Chen's attack immediately drew the ire of the other law enforcers, and they all charged at him. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, you can't. They have a powerful backdash, pow, 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 pow. But Long Chen didn't care. He gave one slap for each of them. They all shot back like shooting stars and crashed against the wall. They looked like piles of dung that had been tossed into the wall. Fuck, I hate people who point at my nose when they talk to me. Long Chen patted his hands. Looking at the human-shaped paintings on the wall, he spat on the ground. The outer sect disciples were all appalled. They knew that these law enforcers couldn't be provoked. Arrogant brat, you dare to strike me? Just wait dash. One of the bricks embedded in the ground shot towards the speaker. It struck him dead on and he vomited blood. That brick almost smashed him in two. Do you want to try saying that again? Said Long Chen coldly. These people were too arrogant. Some insignificant Xiantian disciples dared to curse him in the face? Those guts really were heaven-defying. If Long Chen didn't put them in their place, he wouldn't be Long Chen. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, it's fine. I want to see just how amazing they are to dare curse me in the nose. Long Chen waved his hand. The most irritating people were those who were even wilder than him. Originally, he hadn't been thinking about provoking trouble. But these fellows had gone too far. Long Chen intentionally took out a photographic jade as bait, and the result was to be expected. Who dares to attack my law enforcement hall's disciples? Do you want your entire family to be kicked out of the Shantian Dao sect? At this time, another group of people rushed over. This group was stronger than the first group. Their cultivation bases had reached sea expansion, but they were wearing ordinary robes instead of law enforcer robes. "Brat, are you looking for trouble?" shouted the large man at the front. He waved his cudgel at Long Chen. Long Chen didn't say a word. His reply was a slap in the face. Following the first group, that large man became a painting on the wall. After the first one, Long Chen didn't pause. The rest of the people following the large man were all slapped into the wall. They slammed in so hard that they couldn't be extracted. The few outer sect disciples beside Long Chen were all dumbfounded. This was too domineering. They were unaware that Long Chen had been demoted into an outer sect disciple because he had beaten up a teacher. All they had received were orders to welcome a disciple, and they hadn't expected that the disciple they were to welcome would be Long Chen. If they had known the reason for his demotion, they wouldn't be so shocked now. If he even dared to beat a teacher, then these little fellows were nothing. They were currently just past the city gates, and Long Chen was already using people to create graffiti on the wall. The uproar brought more and more spectators. When people heard that it was Long Chen, the entire city became chaotic as people surged over. It was just like what that outer sect disciple had said. There was basically no one that didn't know Long Chen in the outer sect. They had all heard his great name. That was because in previous generations, the four regions' disciples were just green leaves to set off the Central Plains' heavenly geniuses. For generations, the people living here had hoped for a supreme expert to appear amongst the four regions to fight against those people who looked down on them. So when Long Chen led over 10,000 of the four regions' weakest disciples to pass the inner sect trial and almost killed the Central Plains' peak genius K. Xinyan, his heroic name had shaken all their hearts. These people all hoped for him to vent their anger. Now in front of this sea of people, Long Chen stood with his hands clasped behind his back, and there were several dozen people who had been slapped into the wall so hard that they looked like flatbread. They obediently lay there, their blood slowly dripping down the wall. Those people's bones had all been broken, and they were unable to move. This group of murderers also ended up with such a day. Retribution has finally come. Looking at the law enforcers' miserable state, not even one person felt the slightest pity. The only thing they felt was hatred. In their eyes, these people were fiends who didn't shrink from any crime. Just at this time, the crowd parted as if fleeing from demons as another group of people appeared. These people were wearing the law enforcement hall's robes. They wore square hats with blue lining on the edges. That was the specific color of the law enforcement hall. The person leading them was a rank 3 celestial whose cultivation base had reached late sea expansion. As soon as he arrived, he shouted, "Who was it that attacked people in my territory? You no longer want your life, is that it?" Long Chen frowned. He almost couldn't believe it. These swaggering people were from the law enforcement hall? Their robes were a mess, and their hats were askew. As for the person at the front, he was clearly drunk. His gaze was as unsteady as his steps. Even for someone as experienced as Long Chen, this was his first time seeing such a thing. "Brat, were you trying to cause trouble? You want to die?" He shouted at Long Chen. The group behind him wasn't small, but it wasn't large either. They all seemed drunk. It was very likely they had been drinking when they had been drawn over by the disturbance. Everyone felt resentful that these were their supposed law enforcers. A mid-sea expansion law enforcer walked right in front of Long Chen and raised his hand. "Big brother, why waste so many words with him? Just kill him." Just as he was about to strike, Long Chen's hand struck like lightning on his face. With a resounding sound, that person smashed into the wall as well. Brat Dash, the fellow leading this group, was just about to attack when Long Chen grabbed his hair. Pulling, Long Chen smashed his kneecap up. Long Chen's hard kneecap viciously smashed against the fellow's nose. This one attack caused him to faint. Long Chen gave him another kick, adding another human flatbread to the wall. This flatbread was different from the others. He covered a greater area, and other than blood, some shiny white stuff also came out of him. Many people didn't even know what it was. Fuck, he probably hasn't cultivated for many years. Even his lard was squeezed out. Long Chen was disgusted. He was finally amazed. Even amongst cultivators, there were people who could get astoundingly fat. It seemed the law enforcement hall was quite the cushy place. Without another word, Long Chen charged at the other stunned law enforcers. After giving them a kick each, they landed on the wall. More human flatbread appeared on the wall. Fortunately, the wall was supported by powerful runes and didn't collapse. However, this large wall now had a stunning and funny scene on it. Around 100 people were stuck on it, incapable of moving. Good. Following one person, countless people began to cheer, and the cheering came in loud waves. Their voices were all emotional. Are these people all so disliked? Asked Long Chen. Of course, they have the insignia of the law enforcement hall, and so they're capable of committing all kinds of crimes. People have long since grown tired of their bullying. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, you've helped us vent some pent-up frustration. These people also often bully us outer sect disciples, but we can't offend them, so we can only endure, explained a disciple. A comparatively more mature disciple said, however, senior apprentice brother Long Chen, you might have vented some anger for us, but now it'll be troublesome for you. It's fine. I'm not afraid of trouble. If it was people from the law enforcement hall, Long Chen didn't care about beating them to death. Within the Xiantian Dao sect's northwestern region, there was a small lake that was as flat as a mirror. The scenery was beautiful, and there was a person sitting by the lake, fishing. This person was the one with the highest authority in the Xiantian Dao sect, the Xian Master. Beside him, the Elder Hall Master bowed. Xian Master, you called for me? The Xian Master nodded. How do you feel about Long Chen? Lu Tsong was surprised. After thinking about it for a moment, he said, he's a very contradictory person. Sometimes smart, sometimes foolish, sometimes crafty like a fox, sometimes fierce like a tiger. There's no way to explain him. But there is one thing that is certain. As long as this person doesn't fall, he will definitely become a supreme expert. What an appropriate evaluation. Truly worthy of my Dao sect's pillar, the Elder Hall Master. Your vision is as sharp as ever. Regretfully, the law enforcement hall master is blinded by greed and power. He lost his transcendent heart long ago, and sooner or later, he'll pay the consequences, said the Xian Master. Are you thinking of beating him? Asked Lu Tsong. Why would I beat him? The Xian Master smiled slightly. Lu Tsong was dumbfounded. He didn't know how to respond to that. If he was speaking to an ordinary person, he'd say that he was the Xian Master, the rudder of the entire Xiantian Dao sect. If he didn't handle this matter, who would? But it was precisely because he was the leader that these words were thought-provoking. But Lu Tsong was unable to comprehend his meaning in the end. Then let me ask you, how would you feel if I handed the Xiantian Dao sect to Long Chen? Asked the Xian Master. Absolutely not. With his temperament, he'll flip the entire sect around. Lu Tsong's expression drastically changed. The Xian Master didn't find this reaction to be unexpected. He was just about to speak once more when he suddenly frowned. We'll talk about that later. That fellow's causing trouble again. Go send someone to handle it. Have him fall one more rank. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.